There is a number that has followed the human story from its very first pages, and that number is 100. 100 is the number of the flock in the parable, 99 safe on the hillside, and one lost somewhere out in the dark. 100 is the number that Jesus chose when he wanted to explain what God does when a single soul goes missing. Not 50, not 10, 100. Because 100 is the number that makes the missing one seem statistically insignificant, and that is precisely the point. 1 out of 100 is 1%. 1% is a rounding error. 1% is the kind of loss that any reasonable shepherd would absorb, write off and forget by morning. And Jesus said no. He said the shepherd leaves the 99 and goes into the wilderness after the one. He goes until he finds it, not until he gets tired. Not until the weather turns, until he finds it. So today I am going to give you 100 promises, 100 promises from God for the person who feels completely alone. And I want you to understand why that number matters, because if you are watching this right now and you feel like the one who wandered off, like the one nobody counted, like the one whose absence would barely register, then 100 is exactly the number God has been using to talk about you since the beginning. 100 promises, and every single one of them was written down before you were born, by people who felt exactly what you are feeling tonight. Here is what I promise you in return. By the time we reach the 100th promise, you will not be able to honestly say that God has been silent about your loneliness. You may say he has been slow. You may say he has been mysterious. You may say you do not understand his timing, and you would be in very good company. The Psalms are full of people saying exactly that. But you will not be able to say he never spoke, because he spoke 100 times. And we are going to walk through every one of them together, so stay with me. This is going to take a while. That is intentional. Loneliness is not healed in a sentence. It is healed the way a shepherd searches, slowly, thoroughly, refusing to leave until the last stone is turned over. Let's begin. Before we go further, I want to ask you for one thing, and it is the only thing I will ask. Would you subscribe to this channel? It is free. It costs you nothing, not a cent, not a subscription fee, not a trial period that quietly starts charging you in 30 days. It is one tap on the subscribe button just below this video, and then it's done. Here is why I'm asking. There is a next teaching coming. There always is. And if you don't subscribe, what will happen is not dramatic. It's just quiet. The video will be made, and it will go out, and it will find its way to other people, and you simply won't be there. Not because you decided against it, but because the current of the internet carried you somewhere else, and you never saw it. That's how most things we love slip away from us, not with a decision, with a drift. So subscribing is really just a way of saying, I want a place to come back to. I want this to be a room I know how to find again. Every week, the same door. That's all. Tap subscribe below the video, and you've done it. And before we start, I'd like you to do something in the comments. Tell me where in the world you're watching from. Just the city or the country or a small town nobody's heard of. Because I want you to see something as this video goes on. I want you to scroll down and watch the map light up. Manila, Lagos, Manchester, Ohio, São Paulo, a truck stop off the interstate at 2 in the morning, a hospital parking lot, someone's kitchen table in Dublin. You came here because you feel alone. Go read that comment section and then tell me how alone you actually are. All right, 100 promises. Let's start with the first one. Part 1. The promises that God is with you. Promise 1. I will never leave you nor forsake you. We begin here because everything else stands on it. Deuteronomy 31:6. Moses is speaking, and he is old. He is about to die, and he knows it. He has led these people for 40 years through a wilderness that killed almost everyone who started the journey. And now he is standing at the edge of a land he will never enter, giving a farewell speech to a generation that will have to go on without him. And he says, "Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or terrified because of them, for the Lord your God goes with you. He will never leave you nor forsake you." I want you to notice what Moses is doing. He is leaving. He is the one thing these people have known their entire lives, the pillar they navigated by, the voice that spoke to God on their behalf, the man who parted the sea. And he is going up a mountain and not coming back down. Every human anchor they have is being cut right now in front of them, and in that exact moment he tells them, God will never leave you. Do you understand the weight of that? Moses is not saying you'll never be abandoned from a position of comfort. He's saying it in the middle of an abandonment. He's saying it as the abandoner. His whole point is, I am leaving and he is not. The human presence you counted on is being withdrawn, and this is precisely when you find out what has actually been holding you. The Hebrew here is stronger than English can carry. The phrase behind "never leave you" carries the sense of loosening a grip, letting a rope go slack. And it's framed as an absolute, not he probably won't, not he'll try not to, but a total foreclosure of the possibility. God will not slacken his hold on you. The rope does not go loose. And then the second verb, forsake. That word means to abandon someone in a place where they cannot survive alone. It's the word you'd use for leaving an infant in a field, for walking away from a wounded man in a desert. It's not merely departure, it's departure with the knowledge that the person left behind will not make it. God says that will not happen to you. Now here is what I need you to hear, because this is where most people lose it. You are going to feel forsaken. You may feel forsaken tonight. Feeling forsaken and being forsaken are two entirely different countries, and the entire Bible is written by people who lived in the first one while insisting on the truth of the second. David felt forsaken. He wrote it down. My God, why have you forsaken me? That's Psalm 22. And David wrote it with his own hand about his own life. And then Jesus on the cross quoted it. The Son of God used the words of a man who felt abandoned because they were the truest words available. But go read the end of Psalm 22. David gets there. He gets all the way through the feeling and comes out the other side saying, God has not despised or scorned the suffering of the afflicted one. He has not hidden his face from him, but has listened to his cry for help. The feeling was real. The feeling was also not the final report. So promise one is this: your loneliness is not evidence. It is weather. It is real weather. It will soak you to the skin. It will make you cold. It is not imaginary, and no one gets to tell you it isn't happening. But weather is not geology. Weather is not the ground under your feet. And the ground under your feet tonight is a God who has foreclosed the possibility of letting go of you. He will not slacken the rope. He will not leave you in the field. Promise 2, I am with you always, to the very end of the age. Matthew 28:20. The last sentence Jesus speaks in Matthew's entire gospel. Think about that placement. Matthew has 28 chapters. He has recorded the Sermon on the Mount, the parables, the miracles, the confrontations, the trial, the crucifixion, the resurrection. And of everything he could have chosen to end on, every possible final image, he ends on a promise about presence. And here is the detail almost everyone misses. Read the 2 verses before it. Jesus is standing on a mountain in Galilee with the 11 disciples, and Matthew writes, when they saw him, they worshipped him, but some doubted. Some doubted. This is after the resurrection. They are looking at him. He is standing in front of them, alive, having been dead. And some of them are standing there thinking, I don't know about this. And Jesus does not correct them. He does not pull the doubters aside for remediation. He does not say, let me address the concerns in the room. He gives them the Great Commission. Go, make disciples, baptize, teach. And then he says, and surely I am with you always to the very end of the age. He says, I am with you to a group that includes doubters. The promise is not contingent on their certainty. It's extended over the whole group, believers and waverers alike, and no distinction is made. If you are watching this and you feel alone, partly because you're not sure you believe any of it anymore, if your faith has become a kind of muscle memory you go through without conviction, then you need to know you are standing on that mountain in Galilee, and the promise was made in your direction anyway. The Greek phrase for always is literally all the days, every single one. Not always in the abstract, cloudy sense, all the days. The good days, the days you can't get out of bed, the days you're fine, the days you're not fine and can't tell anyone, the day nobody called, the day you sat in your car in the parking lot for 20 minutes because you couldn't face going inside. All the days, and to the very end of the age. The word there means the completion, the consummation, the point at which everything arrives at its intended end. So the promise runs to the last possible day and does not stop before it. There is no expiration on this. There is no clause. There is no version of your future where you have gone too far, waited too long, or become too much for this promise to still be running. He is with you all the days, including this one. Promise 3. Fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. Isaiah 41:10. And I want to slow down on this one because it's more surgical than it first appears. The full verse. So do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. Notice the architecture. There are 2 commands and then 4 promises, and the promises are the reason for the commands. God does not say don't be afraid and leave it there. That would be useless, and God is not in the business of useless instructions. He says, don't be afraid because, and then gives you the because I am with you, because I am your God. I will strengthen, I will help, I will uphold. But here's the part that undoes me. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. The right hand in the ancient world was the hand of action, the sword hand, the hand of authority and power. It's the hand you would use to fight with, to sign with, to bless with. And God says he will use that hand, the strong one, the working one, the one that does things, to hold you up. Not a finger, not a token gesture from a distance. The right hand. Now consider the context. Isaiah 41 is spoken to a people who are about to lose everything. Exile is coming. The nation will fall. The temple will burn, and they will be marched hundreds of miles to a foreign country where nobody speaks their language and nobody worships their God. This promise is given to people on the edge of the worst loneliness a nation can experience, the loneliness of losing your entire world. And God's word to them is not, this won't happen. It's, I am with you while it happens. That's the pattern. And you need to see it, because it will come up again and again through these 100 promises. God very rarely promises that the hard thing won't happen. He promises his presence inside it. The Israelites went into exile. The temple did burn, and God went with them, and remarkably, some of the most extraordinary encounters with God in the entire Old Testament happen in Babylon. Ezekiel's visions, Daniel's revelations, the furnace, the lion's den. The exile was not the absence of God. It turned out to be a place where he showed up in ways he never had in Jerusalem. Your worst season may not be the place where God is absent. It may be the place where he is about to be most visible. Do not be dismayed. He has you in his right hand. Promise 4. The Lord your God is in your midst, a mighty one who will save. Zephaniah 3:17. This is one of the strangest and most beautiful verses in the entire Bible, and almost nobody reads Zephaniah. Here it is, the Lord your God is in your midst, a mighty one who will save. He will rejoice over you with gladness. He will quiet you by his love. He will exult over you with loud singing. Stop on that. He will exult over you with loud singing. God sings over you loudly. I want you to sit inside the strangeness of that image, because we have made God so abstract and so distant and so managerial that we have lost the ability to picture him doing something as intimate and unguarded as singing over a person. The Hebrew word behind exult carries the sense of spinning around, of whirling. It's a word about physical, unrestrained joy, the kind that moves your body before you decide to move it. And the singing isn't a hum. The text specifies loud. God is not quietly pleased with you at a professional distance. God is spinning and singing over you at volume, and the middle phrase, he will quiet you by his love. That's what a parent does with a crying child. You don't reason with an infant. You don't explain to them that their distress is disproportionate to the situation. You pick them up and you hold them, and the crying stops, not because anything was solved, but because they are being held. The Hebrew here suggests exactly that, a silencing that comes from love rather than from resolution. So here is the picture Zephaniah gives us. God in your midst, not observing from orbit, in your midst, mighty enough to save. And what does this mighty God do with his might? He holds you until you stop crying, and he sings over you while he does it. And here's the context, because it makes it heavier. Zephaniah is a book of judgment. It is one of the harshest books in the Old Testament. Chapters of the great day of the Lord is near, of nations falling, of desolation. It is not a gentle book. And then, at the very end, this is what the whole thunderstorm was building toward. Underneath all the judgment was a God who wanted his people back so he could sing over them. If you feel alone tonight, understand. There is a song being sung over you right now that you cannot hear. That's not poetic license. That's Zephaniah 3:17. And the fact that you can't hear it doesn't mean it isn't happening. It means you're on the wrong side of a veil that is going to come down eventually. Promise 5. When you pass through the waters, I will be with you. Isaiah 43:2. When you pass through the waters, I will be with you. And when you pass through the rivers, they will not sweep over you. When you walk through the fire, you will not be burned. The flames will not set you ablaze. Read that again and count the conditionals. There are none. It doesn't say if you pass through the waters. It says when. God is not promising you a life without deep water. He is telling you flatly that the water is coming, and he is telling you what will be true when you're in it. This is one of the most honest things in Scripture, and it's why I trust it. A religion invented to comfort people would say the water isn't coming. This says the water is coming, the rivers are coming, the fire is coming. And then it says, I will be with you. Now look at the verbs. Pass through, walk through. 3 times movement, not stand in, not live in. Pass through, walk through. The water is a place you are crossing, not a place you are settling. You are not a resident of this season. You are a traveler in it. And the specific promises, the rivers will not sweep over you. The flames will not set you ablaze. Notice, he does not say you won't get wet. He does not say you won't feel the heat. Anyone who's been through fire knows you come out smelling like smoke. You carry it. The promise is not that the experience won't touch you. The promise is that it will not consume you. There is a difference between being burned and being burned up, and God is promising the second one. You will get scorched. You will not be destroyed. And then think about who actually lived this. 3 young men in Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, thrown into a furnace heated 7 times hotter than normal. So hot, it killed the guards who threw them in. And the king looks in and says, Weren't there 3 men that we tied up and threw into the fire? Look, I see 4 men walking around in the fire, unbound and unharmed, and the 4th looks like a son of the gods. 4 men. Here's what I want you to catch. The fourth one didn't show up until they were in the fire. He didn't meet them at the door. He didn't stop the sentence. He was in there, and he was in there with them. And he was only visible from outside once they were inside. So if you are in the fire tonight and you feel alone, you may simply be unable to see from within what would be obvious from without. There are 4 of you in there. There have always been 4. Promise 6. I am with you and will watch over you wherever you go. Genesis 28:15, and this one is my favorite because of who God says it to. Jacob, a liar and a thief who has just stolen his brother's blessing by putting goatskin on his arms and lying to his blind, dying father's face. And now he's running because Esau has promised to kill him, and he is running with nothing. No possessions, no companion, no plan. Night falls in the middle of nowhere, and he lies down in the dirt and puts a rock under his head for a pillow. That is as alone as a human being gets. He is a fugitive from his family, alone in open country, sleeping on a stone, and that is the night God shows up. He dreams of a ladder, a stairway between earth and heaven, with angels going up and down on it. And God stands above it and says, I am with you and will watch over you wherever you go, and I will bring you back to this land. I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised you. Look at what's not in that speech. There is no rebuke. There is no, we need to talk about what you did to your brother. There is no probationary period. Jacob has done something genuinely awful. He is running from the consequences, and God's opening line is, I am with you. And Jacob wakes up and says the sentence that I think is the most important sentence in this entire teaching. Surely the Lord is in this place, and I was not aware of it. He was not aware of it. God had been in that place the whole time. The stairway was there before Jacob lay down. The angels were going up and down over his head while he was picking out a rock for a pillow. The traffic between heaven and earth was running directly above him, and he had no idea. He thought it was an empty patch of wilderness. He thought he was nowhere. He was standing at the gate of heaven, and he thought he was nowhere. This is the thing about loneliness that I most need you to understand. Loneliness is not a measurement of God's presence. It is a measurement of your perception of God's presence, and those two things can be wildly, catastrophically out of alignment. As Jacob demonstrates, you can be sleeping at the gate of heaven and file it in your memory as the worst night of your life. The place you are calling nowhere may be a stairway. You were not aware of it. That's all. That's the only thing that was wrong. Promise 7. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Psalm 23:4. Everybody knows it. Almost nobody notices the grammar. Psalm 23 starts in the third person. The Lord is my shepherd. He makes me lie down. He leads me. He restores my soul. He guides me. He. David is talking about God. And then the valley arrives. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, and the pronoun changes, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. He becomes you. Do you see what David did? In the green pastures, God was a subject he could discuss. In the valley, God became a person he could address. The intimacy increases in the dark. The distance closes exactly where you'd expect it to widen. David was a shepherd before he was a king, so he knew the geography he was writing about. In that part of the world, moving sheep from summer pasture to winter pasture meant taking them through narrow ravines, steep walls, no way around, so deep and tight that the sun barely reached the floor. Predators used them. Flash floods used them. A sheep could not go through one alone and survive, and the shepherd's job in the ravine was not to make it shorter, it was to walk it. The rod and the staff, the club for fighting off what came at you, the crook for pulling you back when you slipped. Those tools were useless in the pasture. They only mattered in the valley. So here is what I want you to take from Psalm 23. The valley is not a detour. Read the psalm. The shepherd is the one leading. He led you into the pasture, and he is leading you through the ravine, and the ravine is on the route because it is the way to the winter pasture. There is no other road, and the phrase is through the valley, not into, not to, through. It has an exit. You have not been brought here to be left here. Your loneliness has a far wall. And you are not walking toward it alone. You are walking toward it beside someone holding a club and a crook, and he has done this walk more times than you can count. Promise 8. God sets the lonely in families. Psalm 68:6. 6 words in English that rebuild entire lives. God sets the lonely in families. He leads out the prisoners with singing, but the rebellious live in a sun-scorched land. The Hebrew word behind lonely here means solitary, isolated, the only one of its kind. It's used of an only child. It's the word for a person with no one, no family line, no household, nobody who has to take them in. And God's action toward that person is not to comfort them in their isolation. It's to end it. He sets them in families. Now here is the theological weight of this, and it is enormous. In the ancient world, family was not sentiment. Family was survival. Your household was your economy, your legal protection, your food supply, your identity, your old age plan. To be without family was not to be sad. It was to be dead soon. There was no other structure. A person with no family was a person with an expiration date. So when the psalmist says God sets the lonely in families, he is not saying God will help you feel better. He is saying God does the thing that keeps you alive. God is doing for the isolated what nature and society and luck have failed to do. And notice the verb, sets. It's active, deliberate, placed. It's the word you'd use for setting a stone in a wall. Chosen, positioned, fitted into a structure where it now bears weight and is borne by weight. You are not meant to be a stone lying loose in a field. You are meant to be set into a wall where you hold something up and something holds you. And this is where I want to be honest with you, because this promise is one people throw at the lonely carelessly. If you're watching this and you have prayed this verse for years and no family has appeared, I'm not going to tell you the verse has a fine print explanation. I'm going to tell you what the Bible actually shows us, which is that God's families rarely look like the ones we were expecting. Ruth's family was a foreign mother-in-law she had no obligation to. Naomi's grandson came through a daughter-in-law from an enemy nation. David's brother was Jonathan, the son of the man trying to murder him. Jesus, from the cross, looked at his mother and his friend and assigned them to each other. Woman, here is your son, here is your mother, and made a family out of 2 people who were not related in the last minutes of his life, because he would not leave either of them alone. That's how God does it. He does not usually restore what you lost. He builds something you did not expect out of people you did not choose. Keep your eyes open. The family He is setting you in may already be around you, and you may be filing them under acquaintances because they don't match the shape of the thing you lost. Promise 9. I will not leave you as orphans. I will come to you. John 14:18. The upper room, the last night. Jesus has just told the disciples he's leaving. They are understandably coming apart. And in the middle of the most disorienting conversation of their lives, he says, I will not leave you as orphans. I will come to you. The Greek word is orphanos. It means exactly what it looks like, fatherless, parentless. And in the ancient world, it carried a specific horror. An orphan was a person with no advocate, no inheritance, no one legally obligated to feed them. They were the definitionally vulnerable. The Old Testament returns to them again and again: the orphan, the widow, the foreigner, the three categories of person with nobody. And Jesus says, that is not what you're about to become. Now here's what's remarkable. From the disciples' point of view, they were about to be orphaned. Their teacher was about to be executed. Within 24 hours, they would be scattered, hiding, terrified, leaderless. By every visible metric, they were orphans by Friday night. And he told them in advance, it will look exactly like abandonment, and it will not be abandonment, because I will come to you. And he specifies how, a few verses earlier, another advocate, the Spirit of truth, who will not merely be with them but in them. The presence was not being withdrawn, it was being relocated. It was moving from beside them to inside them. What they experienced as loss was actually the most radical intensification of intimacy in the history of God and humanity. They thought they were losing him. He was moving in. So hear this: if you feel like an orphan tonight, if you feel like the person with no advocate, nobody obligated to you, no inheritance coming, what looks like the withdrawal of God has, in the actual biblical record, been the prelude to a deeper form of his presence more often than not. Every single time God seemed to step back in Scripture, he was setting up to come closer. He will not leave you as an orphan. He's already inside the house. Promise. 10. Nothing can separate you from the love of God. Romans 8:38-39. And Paul, when he wrote it, was building a wall. For I am convinced that neither death nor life, neither angels nor demons, neither the present nor the future, nor any powers, neither height nor depth, nor anything else in all creation, will be able to separate us from the love of God that is in Christ Jesus our Lord. Read the list slowly. Paul is not being poetic. He is being systematic. He is going through every category of reality he can name and closing the door on each one. Death, the thing everyone fears most. Life, because sometimes living is harder than dying, and Paul knew it. Angels and demons, the entire spiritual realm, both sides of it. The present, this moment, whatever it holds. The future, every moment that hasn't happened yet, including the ones you're dreading. Powers, every authority, human or otherwise. Height and depth, those were astrological terms in the ancient world, the highest and lowest points of a star's path, meaning your fate, your destiny, the stars themselves. And then, in case he missed something, nor anything else in all creation, he seals it. He goes around the entire perimeter of existence and finds no gap. And here's why Paul could write this. This is a man who was beaten with rods 3 times, whipped 5 times, stoned and left for dead, shipwrecked 3 times, spent a night and a day in the open sea, was in prison repeatedly, and eventually was executed by the empire he was writing to. He is not writing from a comfortable study. He wrote much of his correspondence in chains. When Paul says nothing can separate you from God's love, he has personally tested a startling number of the items on his own list. Now notice what is not on it. Your feelings are not on the list. Your doubt is not on the list. Your failure is not on the list. Your worst night is not on the list. You are not on the list. You cannot separate yourself from the love of God. You are part of anything else in all creation, and Paul has already closed that door too. You do not have the power to make God stop loving you. That power does not exist. It is not on the market. Nothing in the created order possesses it, and you are in the created order. The rope does not go slack. It never has. Part 2. The promises for when no one sees you. Promise. 11. You are the God who sees me. Genesis 16:13. And this may be the most important promise in this entire video for the person who feels invisible. Hagar, a slave, an Egyptian, foreign, owned, given to Abraham by Sarah to produce a child, used, and then when the plan worked and Sarah couldn't bear it, mistreated so badly that Hagar ran into the desert, pregnant, alone, with no plan except away. She's a nobody. In the legal framework of her world, she is property. She has no rights, no voice, no standing. She's not the wife. She's not the heir's mother by any covenant. She is a body that was used and is now fleeing into a wilderness where she will probably die. And the angel of the Lord finds her by a spring in the desert. Not Abraham, not Sarah, her. And he calls her by name. Hagar, slave of Sarai, where have you come from and where are you going? He knows her name. And after the encounter, Hagar does something no one else in the entire Bible does. She gives God a name. Not a title she inherited, not something she was taught. She coins it herself out of what just happened to her. El Roi, the God who sees me, a runaway slave girl, alone in a desert, named God. And the name she chose was, You See Me. And then she says the line that should be carved into every wall, I have now seen the one who sees me. Here is what I need you to understand about the placement of this story. This is the first time in the entire Bible that the angel of the Lord appears to anyone, the first theophany of its kind in Scripture. And God did not spend it on the patriarch. He did not spend it on the covenant bearer. He spent it on a foreign, female, pregnant runaway slave in the middle of nowhere with no status whatsoever. That is not an accident. That is a statement about what God is like. If you feel unseen tonight, if you feel like the person whose absence would go unnoticed, whose life is happening in a place nobody looks, whose suffering has no witness, then understand that when God chose who to see first, He chose the person the world had rendered most invisible. He went to the desert. He went to the one nobody was looking for. The God who sees you saw Hagar first. You are not off the map. You are precisely where He looks. Promise 12. Your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you. Matthew 6:6. Jesus, in the Sermon on the Mount, teaching about prayer. But when you pray, go into your room, close the door and pray to your Father who is unseen. Then your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you. Now hear what's underneath this. Jesus has just been talking about people who pray on street corners to be seen. And His alternative is not pray humbly in public. His alternative is go into a room, shut the door, and be alone with God. Jesus prescribes solitude as a good. There is a category of aloneness in Scripture that is not punishment, it's appointment. It's the room where the actual thing happens, and the reason the door is closed is not to hide your shame. It's because what's about to happen is not for spectators. And here's the sentence I want you to carry. Your Father, who sees what is done in secret, everything you have done that no one noticed, He saw. Every night you got through that nobody knew was hard. Every time you did the right thing and no one thanked you. Every prayer you whispered into a dark ceiling with no evidence anyone was listening. Every act of faithfulness that had no audience. There is no such thing as unwitnessed obedience. The room with the closed door has an occupant you didn't count. And notice, this doesn't just mean your suffering is seen, it means your faithfulness is seen. You may feel like your life is going unrecorded. It's being recorded in the only ledger that will still exist in 1,000 years. The world has a very poor accounting system. It only counts what it can see. God's runs on a different principle entirely. It specializes in exactly the things nobody else noticed. Promise 13. Even the very hairs of your head are all numbered. Matthew 10:30. And the context makes it far more startling than the greeting card version. Jesus is sending the disciples out and telling them bluntly what's coming. They'll be handed over to councils, flogged in synagogues, dragged before governors, betrayed by their own brothers, their own fathers, their own children. You will be hated by everyone because of me. That's the context. This is not a comfort speech. This is a warning about total social collapse, the loss of every relationship they have. And in the middle of it, he says, Are not 2 sparrows sold for a penny? Yet not one of them will fall to the ground outside your Father's care. And even the very hairs of your head are all numbered, so don't be afraid, you are worth more than many sparrows. 2 sparrows for a penny. That was the actual market rate. Sparrows were the cheapest meat available, what you bought if you could afford nothing else. Luke's version notes you could get 5 for 2 pennies, buy in bulk, and they'd throw in a free one. The 5th sparrow was worth literally nothing. It was a rounding error in a transaction of the poorest people in the economy, and Jesus says, not one of them falls without your Father knowing, not one, including the free one. Then he escalates. The hairs of your head are numbered, not counted. Anyone can count. Numbered means each one has an index. Each one is individually known and tracked as a distinct item. Think about what that implies. This is knowledge with no practical function. There is no reason for God to know this. It serves no purpose except one. It is the knowledge of someone who cannot stop paying attention to you. That is what love does. Love notices things that don't matter. A mother knows the exact shape of her child's ear. A man who loves a woman knows how she holds her coffee cup. This information is useless. That's precisely why it's evidence. God has useless information about you, enormous quantities of it. He knows things about you that serve no function whatsoever except that he couldn't help noticing. And he said this to people who were about to be hated by everyone. His answer to, "You will lose every human relationship you have," was, "I know the number of hairs on your head." That's not a non sequitur, that's the whole answer. You are about to be uncounted by everyone. And you are counted to the strand by the one who made the strands. Promise 14. You have kept count of my tossings, put my tears in your bottle. Psalm 56:8. And this is to me the single most tender verse in the Old Testament. David writes, you have kept count of my tossings, put my tears in your bottle. Are they not in your book? 2 images, both devastating. First, my tossings. That's the word for wandering, restless movement, the turning of a body that cannot sleep. David is saying, God, you have kept account of the nights I couldn't sleep. You have a number for the times I turned over in the dark. Nobody knows that number. Your spouse doesn't know it. Your closest friend doesn't know it. You don't know it. There is no record of your sleepless nights anywhere in the universe except one. And second, the bottle. In the ancient Near East, there was a practice. Mourners at a funeral would collect their tears in a small vessel, a lacrimatory, and these were kept, sometimes buried with the dead. The tear was not wasted. Grief was collected. It was considered too valuable to let fall into the dirt, and David is asking God to do that. Put my tears in your bottle. Don't let them hit the ground. Keep them. And the answer implied by the next line, are they not in your book? Is yes. They are. Already. Do you understand what that means? Every tear you have cried alone, in a car, in a shower, into a pillow at 3 a.m. so nobody would hear, in a bathroom stall at work, in a hospital corridor, every single one was collected. Not one hit the floor. Not one was wasted. They are in a bottle and they are in a book. Your grief is not garbage. It is being kept. And the context of Psalm 56 makes it heavier. David wrote this when the Philistines had seized him in Gath. He was in enemy hands, in an enemy city, and read 1 Samuel 21. He was so terrified he pretended to be insane, scratching at the doors and letting saliva run down his beard to convince the king he wasn't worth killing. That's the man writing this. A man so afraid he faked madness to survive. And what he says from inside that is, you have my tears in a bottle. If your tears feel wasted tonight, if you feel like you have been crying into a void that swallows it and gives nothing back, the void is a bottle. It has been the whole time. Promise 15. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Jeremiah 1:5. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. Jeremiah is protesting. God has just called him, and Jeremiah's response is essentially, "You have the wrong person, I'm too young, I don't know how to speak." And God's answer goes backward, not forward into what Jeremiah will accomplish, backward, before Jeremiah existed at all. "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you." The Hebrew word for knew there is not informational. It's the word for intimate, relational, experiential knowledge. It's the word used for the deepest human knowing there is. God is not saying, "I had data on you." He's saying, "I knew you," in the fullest sense the language can carry, before there was a you to know. Sit with the sequence. Before you had a body, before you had a name, before your parents met, before there was anything about you to like or dislike, before any achievement, before any failure, before you had done a single thing right or wrong, you were known, which means every human relationship you've ever had was a latecomer. Everyone who knows you met you after. Your mother met you late. Your oldest friend met you very, very late. Everyone in your life came in partway through the story. There is exactly one relationship in your life that predates you, and it is the one you're most likely to doubt. And here's the piece that speaks directly to loneliness. If you feel unknown, if you feel like the people around you are relating to a version of you that isn't quite the real one, like nobody has ever actually reached the bottom of you, then hear this. You have been fully known since before you began. There is no undiscovered part of you. There is no room he hasn't been in. The knowing was complete before the knowing had an object. You have never had a single moment of being unknown. Not one, not ever. Loneliness whispers that if people really knew you, they'd leave. God's answer is that he really knew you from before, in full, and he formed you anyway and set you apart and called you. He knew and he still made you. I'm going to keep going because we're only 15 in, and there are 85 more of these. But I want to pause for one breath and say something. If you're still here, if you've listened this far, I want you to notice something about the last 20 minutes. You have not been alone in them. Somebody is speaking, and you are listening. And whatever else is true about tonight, that is a form of company. It's a small one. It's not a substitute for a person who knows your name and can sit in a room with you. I would never insult you by pretending it is. But it's not nothing. And sometimes not. Nothing is what gets you to morning. Keep going with me. Promise 16. I know the plans I have for you. Jeremiah 29:11. Yes, that one. The one on the coffee mug. And I want to take it back from the coffee mug because the actual verse is far better than the decoration. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future. Now, who is God writing to? Read verse 1. This is a letter. It's a letter Jeremiah sent from Jerusalem to the exiles, the people who had already been carried off to Babylon. This is not a promise to people about to be rescued. It's a promise to people who are already in the disaster, already deported, already living in a foreign country, under a foreign king, with no realistic hope of return. And read verse 10, the sentence immediately before. When 70 years are completed for Babylon, I will come to you and fulfill my good promise to bring you back to this place. 70 years, that's the timeline attached to Jeremiah 29:11, 70 years. Which means most of the people reading that letter died in Babylon. The promise was true, and it was not going to be fulfilled in their lifetime. The hope and the future belonged to their grandchildren. That should destroy the coffee mug version. And I want it to, because the coffee mug version is fragile. It breaks the first time God's plan takes longer than you expected. The real verse doesn't break because it was built for a 70-year wait. Here's what God tells them to do in the meantime, verses 5 through 7. Build houses, plant gardens, marry, have children, seek the peace and prosperity of the city I have carried you into, and pray for it. Live in Babylon, Not in suspended animation waiting for the real life to start. Actually live in the place you didn't choose, in the season you'd never have picked. If you are in a lonely season and you have put your life on hold until it lifts, until the person comes, until the season turns, until the thing changes, God's word to the exiles is plant a garden in Babylon now, because the plan is real and the plan is long. And the plan includes Babylon, not as an interruption, but as a chapter with your name on it. He knows the plans. You don't have to. That's the actual comfort. Not that you'll understand it, but that someone does. Promise 17. He heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds. Psalm 147:3. And you have to read verse 4 to feel the force of it. He heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds. He determines the number of the stars and calls them each by name. Those two verses sit next to each other, deliberately. Verse 3, he binds up wounds. Verse 4, he names every star. The psalmist is doing something specific. He's placing the smallest possible act of care directly beside the largest possible act of power and refusing to acknowledge any tension between them. The God who names 100 billion stars in 100 billion galaxies is, in the same breath, described as doing wound care, bandaging. The Hebrew verb is the practical one, wrapping, binding, the thing a physician does with hands. We assume God's attention is a scarce resource that has to be rationed across a universe. The psalmist assumes the opposite. He assumes God's bandwidth is infinite, and therefore the stars and your broken heart get the same undivided attention, because there is no division in an infinite mind. And broken-hearted, the Hebrew is literally the shattered ones of heart. Shattered, not cracked, not bruised. Broken into pieces. God does not tell shattered people to pull themselves together. He does the binding. That's his verb, not yours. If you are shattered tonight, if the pieces are genuinely on the floor, and you have no idea how they go back together, you are not being asked to reassemble yourself. You are being asked to hold still while someone with very good hands does the work. He named every star. He can find every piece. Promise 18. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted. Psalm 34:18. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. Here is the theological grenade in this verse, and I want you to catch it. It does not say the Lord is close to the strong. It does not say he's close to the ones who have it together, who are managing, who are testifying with clear voices about how good God is. It says he is close to the brokenhearted. Proximity is correlated with brokenness, which means, and follow this, the closeness of God is not something you earn by getting better. It's something that increases as you get worse. The Hebrew for close is the word for nearness in space, physically near and crushed in spirit, and that word is used for something ground down, pulverized, reduced to dust. It's the word for what happens to grain under a millstone. God is spatially nearest to the pulverized. Now here's what I want you to do with this. You have probably felt, in your loneliest moments, that God was far, and you may have concluded that the distance was a verdict, that he'd pulled back because you weren't holding up well enough, weren't praying enough, weren't faithful enough. Psalm 34:18 says the exact opposite is happening. In the moment you feel he is furthest, he is, by his own testimony, or closest. Your feeling and the fact are running in perfectly opposite directions. And David wrote this one too from a specific place. The heading on Psalm 34 says it's from when he pretended to be insane before Abimelech. The same episode behind Psalm 56. The lowest, most humiliating moment of his life. A king reduced to drooling in a doorway to survive. That's when he learned this. Not on the throne, in the doorway. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted. If you are broken tonight, you are in the closest place to God that a human being can occupy. You just can't feel it, because being crushed and being comforted feel almost identical from the inside. The same pressure, the same weight, the same hands. Promise 19, He will cover you with His feathers, and under His wings you will find refuge. Psalm 91:4. And this metaphor is not what you think it is. He will cover you with His feathers, and under His wings you will find refuge. His faithfulness will be your shield and rampart. We picture something soft and pleasant, a pillow, a comforter, something you sink into. That's not what a bird does. Farmers who have gone through a fire have described finding a hen dead on the ground, burned, and lifting the body to find the chicks alive underneath. She stood where she was and let the fire take her and did not move, and the thing she was covering survived because the shell of her body absorbed what would have killed them. That's the wing metaphor. The wing is not a cushion. The wing is a barrier. It's the thing that takes the damage so the thing underneath doesn't. And the reason the chicks live is that something above them died in the position it was standing in. And this is Psalm 91, so read the next verse. You will not fear the terror of night, nor the arrow that flies by day, nor the pestilence that stalks in the darkness, nor the plague that destroys at midday. Terror, arrows, pestilence, plague, those are all still there. Psalm 91 does not remove them from the world. The arrow is still flying, the plague still stalks. The promise is not an empty world. The promise is a wing over you in the dangerous world. And notice, Psalm 91 is the psalm Satan quoted to Jesus in the wilderness. He used this exact psalm to suggest Jesus throw himself off the temple, and Jesus refused because the wing is not a stunt. It's not immunity you test, it's shelter you live under. If you feel exposed tonight, like you're standing in an open field with no cover, and everything that can find you will, there is a wing. The fire is real, the wing is over you, and whatever is above you has already demonstrated historically on a hill outside Jerusalem that it is willing to burn rather than move. Promise 20. Cast all your anxiety on Him because He cares for you. 1 Peter 5:7. And the word cares does more work here than any English reader realizes. Cast all your anxiety on Him because He cares for you. Cast is a violent word. It's the word used for throwing the cloaks onto the donkey at the triumphal entry, a heaving motion, a decisive fling of something off yourself and onto something else. It is not gently lay down, it's throw, and all your anxiety, all of it. Not the reasonable portion, not the part you've decided is legitimate. Peter does not ask you to triage your worries and only bring the qualifying ones, but it's the last phrase that matters most. Because He cares for you. The Greek there means because it matters to Him concerning you. The construction implies personal interest, concern. It's the word for something being your business, something you have a stake in. You are God's business. Your situation matters to Him in the way that things matter to you when they involve someone you love, not as a case file, but as a stake. And Peter, of all people, is the one who wrote this. Peter, who denied Jesus 3 times by a fire and went out and wept bitterly. Peter, who knew exactly what it was to carry a weight of shame that no one could lift off him. And Jesus found him on a beach and cooked him breakfast and asked him 3 times if he loved him, 1 for each denial, and gave him back his life. Peter knows what it is to have something cast off you by someone who cares. So he's not writing theory, he's writing testimony. Throw it on him. He can hold it, he wants it, and this is the part you'll resist. He would rather carry it than watch you carry it. Part 3. The promises for the night. Promise 21. Weeping may stay for the night, but rejoicing comes in the morning. Psalm 35. And I want to be careful here because this verse gets used as a slap. People say it to grieving people to hurry them along, as if it means, cheer up, it'll be over soon. That's not what it says. Look at the structure. Weeping may stay for the night, but rejoicing comes in the morning. The word behind stay means to lodge, to spend the night as a guest. Weeping is not a visitor who drops by, it's a guest who unpacks, who takes the spare room, who is staying. The verse fully concedes the duration. It does not minimize it. Weeping gets the whole night, and the night in that world was not 8 hours with a lamp. It was darkness you could not push back, from sundown to sunrise, with no way to hurry it. You could not skip it. You could not distract yourself out of it. You lay in it and waited. So the verse is not, your grief is brief. The verse is, your grief has a shift. It works the night, and the night ends, not because you ended it, but because mornings are structural. The sun does not rise because you earned it or asked well. It rises because that's what the system does. Rejoicing comes in the morning. The verb suggests arrival, like someone showing up. Joy comes to you. It's not something you generate. It arrives, like a person at your door, when the night has finished its shift. And this is what I want you to hold on to if it's late where you are, and this feels like the longest night of your life. You cannot make it morning. That is not your job, and you do not have the equipment. Your job is to still be there when it comes. Weeping lodges for the night. It does not sign a lease. Promise 22. He gives to his beloved sleep. Psalm 127:2. In vain you rise early and stay up late, toiling for food to eat, for he gives to his beloved sleep. If you are lonely, you probably know something about the ceiling at 3 a.m. Loneliness and insomnia are close relatives. The night is when the noise stops, and there's nothing left to distract you from the shape of the thing. Everyone else is asleep, which somehow makes it worse. The whole world unconscious, and you're the only one awake in it, like the last person left in a building. And Psalm 127 says something almost scandalous. Sleep is a gift. It's given. It's not achieved. Look at the contrast. Rising early, staying up late, toiling, that's the frantic self-sufficiency of someone who believes the whole structure depends on their vigilance. And the psalm says, that's in vain. Not wrong, exactly. In vain. It doesn't accomplish what you think it accomplishes. Because, and this is verse 1, unless the Lord builds the house, the builders labor in vain. Unless the Lord watches over the city, the guards stand watch in vain. The guards, that's the image. God is saying, there is already a watchman. You are standing a second, redundant watch on a wall that is already guarded, and the only thing your vigilance is producing is your exhaustion. You can sleep because someone is awake, and the phrase, to his beloved, that's not a category you climb into by performance. It's what you are. The sleep is given to the beloved because they are beloved, not because they were productive enough to deserve rest. So if you cannot sleep tonight, hear this. The wall is guarded. It was guarded before you started worrying about it, and it will be guarded after you stop. You are not the thing holding your life together. You never were. That job is taken, and it's taken by someone who does not sleep. Psalm 121. He who watches over Israel will neither slumber nor sleep. He doesn't sleep so that you can. Let go of the wall. It's not yours. Promise 23. Even the darkness is not dark to you. Psalm 139:12. And this is the verse that dismantles hiding. If I say, surely the darkness will hide me and the light become night around me, even the darkness will not be dark to you. The night will shine like the day, for darkness is as light to you. David is testing something. He's running an experiment in the psalm. He's asking whether there's anywhere he could go that God isn't. He tries heaven. He tries the depths. He tries the wings of the dawn, the far side of the sea. And then he tries the last option available to a desperate person, darkness. If I can't outrun him, maybe I can hide. And the answer is, darkness doesn't work on God. God has no night vision because God has no night. The concept doesn't apply to him. Now, That's terrifying if you're hiding something, but that's not the primary use of this verse, and it's not why David wrote it. Read where the psalm goes. It ends with, "Search me, God, and know my heart." David isn't fleeing at the end. He's inviting, because here's the thing about being unable to hide from God. It cuts both ways. If you are in a dark place tonight, not a sinful dark, just a dark, the kind where you can't see the walls and don't know how big the room is, then the fact that darkness doesn't function on God means He is not having any difficulty finding you. You are not in a place He has to search. You are not obscured. There is no fog on His side of this. You feel like you're calling out from inside a cave, and from where He stands, you are standing in an open field at noon. The darkness is your condition. It is not the condition of the room. He is looking right at you, and you cannot see Him. And the only thing wrong with that picture is happening on your side of it. Promise 24. I will turn the darkness into light before them. Isaiah 42:16. I will lead the blind by ways they have not known. Along unfamiliar paths I will guide them. I will turn the darkness into light before them and make the rough places smooth. These are the things I will do. I will not forsake them. Every clause here is aimed at a specific fear. I will lead the blind, not heal, lead. God does not always restore your sight before He moves you. Sometimes He leads you while you're still blind. The guidance comes before the clarity, not after. By ways they have not known, along unfamiliar paths. He concedes it. You don't know this road. You've never been here. The path is unfamiliar, and that is not a mistake or a sign you've gone wrong. I will turn the darkness into light before them. Ahead of them. The light doesn't flood the whole landscape. It goes on in front of you as you go, which means you will never be able to see the destination. You'll see the next section of road. That's the deal. And make the rough places smooth. He doesn't remove the terrain. He works on it. Ahead of you, out of sight. And then the closing line. These are the things I will do. I will not forsake them. He signs it. He puts His name on it. Here's what this means for a lonely person tonight. You may not be able to see 1 inch of your future. You may not know how this resolves, whether the season lifts, whether the phone ever rings. And Isaiah 42:16 says, the blindness is not the disqualification. The blind are specifically the ones He leads. You do not need to be able to see to be guided. You need to be willing to be led by someone who can. The light goes on before you. Not around you, before you. Take the step and watch what happens to the darkness where your foot lands. Promise 25. The night shines like the day. I want to stay in Psalm 139 one more moment because there's a piece we skipped. Where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence? If I go up to the heavens, you are there. If I make my bed in the depths, you are there. If I rise on the wings of the dawn, if I settle on the far side of the sea, even there your hand will guide me, your right hand will hold me fast. If I make my bed in the depths. The Hebrew word is Sheol, the grave, the realm of the dead. The place in ancient Hebrew cosmology that was understood as the one location where God's presence and praise did not reach. Other psalms say it outright. The dead don't praise you. Sheol can't hope in your faithfulness. And David says, even there, he is deliberately violating his own culture's theology to make a point. He is going to the one place his tradition said God wasn't, and planting a flag and saying, you are there too. And the phrase, make my bed, that's the language of settling in, of staying. He's not passing through Sheol, he's putting sheets on the bed. He's saying, even if I moved into the deepest, deadest, most God-forsaken address in the universe and lived there, you'd be there. Then, even there, your hand will guide me. Your right hand will hold me fast. Hold me fast. The word means to grasp, to seize, to take hold of with strength. It's not a gentle touch, it's a grip. So here is Promise 25, and I want you to take it personally. There is no address you can move to that is outside of this. If you have made your bed in a depth, if you have been living in the lowest place you know how to describe, and you've been there long enough that it has become an address rather than a visit, he is there, not visiting. There, already there when you arrived. He was there before you were making the bed. You cannot outrun him. You have tried. It doesn't work. And on the night you finally stop running, you will discover he has been keeping pace this whole time and never once looked tired. Part 4. The Promises That You Matter. Promise 26. You are precious and honored in my sight, and I love you. Isaiah 43:4. And this is God speaking in the first person about how he feels about you, which should stop us cold every time. Since you are precious and honored in my sight, and because I love you, I will give people in exchange for you, nations in exchange for your life. 3 words: precious, honored, loved. Precious, the Hebrew means costly, rare, valuable. It's used of gemstones and of things that are expensive because they are scarce. God is not saying you are nice. He's saying you are rare. There's a scarcity in you. There's one of you. Honored, the word is from the root meaning heavy, weighty. It's the same root as the word for glory. To be honored is to have weight in someone's estimation, to be substantial to them, to be the opposite of trivial. If you feel weightless tonight, if you feel like you could vanish and the water would close over the spot without a ripple, God's word for how he sees you is the word for heavy. And love, he just says it. First person, I love you. There's no hedging, no theological frame, no conditions. And then the outrageous next clause, I will give people in exchange for you, nations in exchange for your life. That's exchange language. Ransom language. God is saying he would trade nations for you. That is not a rational statement. There is no arithmetic in which one person outweighs nations. And that's exactly the point. This is not arithmetic. This is what love says. Love does not do math. Any parent who has ever sat in a hospital and thought, take anything, take everything, just let them live, understands this sentence perfectly, and no economist ever will. And then, of course, God did it. He put a price on the table that was, by any accounting, absurd. He gave his son. For you specifically, not for humanity as an abstraction, but for you, the one watching this, at whatever hour it is where you are. You are precious, you are heavy, you are loved. And the exchange rate God has publicly stated for you is nations. Whatever you have been told about your worth by someone who left, by someone who never showed up, by the silence in your phone, you now have a competing valuation on record from the only appraiser whose numbers are binding. Promise 27. You are not your own. You were bought at a price. 1 Corinthians 6:19-20. You are not your own. You were bought at a price. Now, this verse usually gets used as a warning. Behave because you're not your own. But sit with it from inside loneliness, and it reads completely differently. You are not your own. If you are lonely, one of the cruelest thoughts available is, I am on my own. Nobody's coming. Whatever happens to me is mine to handle. If I fall, I hit the ground alone. If I disappear, nobody's affected. I belong to no one. And Scripture says, false, you are not your own. That's not primarily a rule. That's a statement about who you belong to. You have an owner. And I know that word is uncomfortable in our world, so let me put it another way. You have someone whose you are. Someone for whom your existence is not neutral. Someone with a claim, an investment, a stake. You were bought at a price. Purchased. That word was the language of the slave market. Buying someone out. And the whole point of the transaction is that the buyer wanted the thing enough to pay. What God paid, he paid publicly, on a hill, in daylight, in front of witnesses. That's the price. That's what you cost. So when the thought comes, Nobody would care. The answer is not a feeling. It's a receipt. The transaction is on record. Somebody already paid, and he paid an amount that should tell you exactly how badly he wanted you. You are not on your own. You are not unclaimed. You are the most expensive thing in the room. Promise 28. I have called you by name. You are mine. Isaiah 43:1. Do not fear, for I have redeemed you. I have summoned you by name. You are mine. I have called you by name, not by category, not by number, not by your role or your usefulness or your demographic, by name. There is a particular loneliness in being addressed generically, being sir or ma'am, being the customer, the patient, the applicant, the case number, going whole days where no one uses your name, where you are talked at as a function rather than to as a person, and God's opening move on you is your name. Think of the moments in Scripture where he uses one. Hagar, Abraham, Abraham, Moses, Moses, Samuel, Samuel, Saul, Saul. And after the resurrection in the garden, a woman is standing outside a tomb crying, and she thinks he's the gardener, and he says one word, Mary, and she knows instantly. He didn't explain. He didn't prove it. He said her name, and the whole thing collapsed into recognition. That's what your name in his mouth does. And then, you are mine. 2 words, no qualifiers, not you could be mine, not you're mine if. Present tense, declarative, done. Everyone else in your life has a conditional relationship with you, whether they'd admit it or not. Friendships fade with distance. Love can be withdrawn. People move. People change. People die. Every human bond you have is contingent on something. You are mine is not contingent on anything. It's a statement of fact about a completed transaction. If nobody has said your name with love in a long time, he said it before you had one, and he's still saying it. Promise 29. See, I have engraved you on the palms of my hands. Isaiah 49:16. And the context is a devastating accusation. Verse 14, but Zion said, the Lord has forsaken me, the Lord has forgotten me. That's the complaint. Not a question, an accusation. Forsaken, forgotten. God, you left. And worse than that, you didn't even notice you left. And God's response, verse 15, can a mother forget the baby at her breast and have no compassion on the child she has borne? Though she may forget, I will not forget you. He goes to the most reliable bond in human experience, a nursing mother and her infant, a bond that is chemical, biological, involuntary, a bond that wakes a woman from dead sleep at the smallest sound. And he says, even that can fail. He's honest about it. Some mothers do forget. Some children are abandoned by the one person biology built to be unable to, and then, I will not. He rates his own reliability above the most reliable thing you can name, and he does it while acknowledging that thing sometimes fails. Then verse 16, see, I have engraved you on the palms of my hands, engraved, not written, not held, cut in. The word means to hew, to carve, to cut into a hard surface. It is the word for what you do to stone. You are cut into his hands, and you know where this goes. You know what is actually, historically, permanently carved into the palms of Christ's hands, 2 holes. And when he came back from the dead, he kept them. He didn't get a new body without them. He showed them to Thomas and said, put your finger here. The wounds are still there in the resurrection body, in eternity, which means that when you feel forgotten, the answer to that feeling is a physical mark on a body that is currently, right now, in existence. He is not remembering you as an act of will. He cannot look at his own hands without seeing you. You are not a note he might lose. You are scar tissue. Zion said, you've forgotten me. And God said, look at my hands. Promise 30. You are a chosen people, a royal priesthood. 1 Peter 2:9-10. But you are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's special possession. Once you were not a people, but now you are the people of God. Once you had not received mercy, but now you have received mercy. Look at that last part. Once you were not a people, but now you are the people of God. Peter is quoting Hosea, the prophet who was told to name his own children, not loved, and not my people, as a living sign of Israel's condition. Those were actual children walking around with those names, and Hosea prophesied that God would reverse it. Those called not my people would be called children of the living God. Peter picks that up and hands it to a scattered, persecuted group of believers across Asia Minor, people who had in many cases lost their families for their faith, people who had been cut off, disowned, made strangers in their own towns. And he says, you were not a people. Notice he doesn't deny it. He doesn't say, you always belonged and you just didn't know it. He concedes the fact there was a real period when you were nobodies, but now you are the people of God. Peter is writing to exiles. He calls them that in verse 1 of the letter, scattered resident foreigners. He is writing to people who by every civic measure did not belong anywhere. And he tells them they are a nation, a priesthood, royalty, a possession God specifically wanted. If you have lost your people, if you were cut off or you left, or the group closed behind you and you've been outside it ever since, hear what Peter is doing. He is not telling you to get your old people back. He is telling you that a new nation has already been constituted and your citizenship in it was granted, not applied for. You were not a people. Now you are. That transition already happened. The paperwork is done. Part 5. The promises that he hears you promise 31. This poor man called and the Lord heard him, Psalm 34:6. And it's the pronoun that gets me. This poor man called and the Lord heard him. He saved him out of all his troubles. This poor man, not the poor man, not poor men generally. This one, specific, individual. David is pointing at himself, and by pointing at himself, he's making it pointable. He's giving you a word you can put your own life into. This one right here, the one nobody was looking at, and the Lord heard him. Heard is not a passive word in Hebrew. It carries the sense of hearing and responding, listening with intent to act. It's not that the sound reached him, it's that he received it and moved. Now, Psalm 34 again is from the drooling in the doorway episode. David is at his absolute floor. He is a man who has been anointed king and is currently faking mental illness in an enemy court because it's the only card he has left. And what he says about it afterward is, I called and he heard. That's it. No technique, no ritual, no qualification. The prayer that got through was the prayer of a terrified man with nothing, and the entire content of it was help. If you have been thinking your prayers aren't good enough, that you don't have the words, that you can't concentrate, that all you can produce is a groan or a single syllable or nothing at all, Romans 8 says the Spirit intercedes for us through wordless groans. Wordless. The groan is a prayer. It's already been translated before it left your chest. This poor man called. That's all he did. And the Lord heard him. Promise 32, before they call, I will answer. Isaiah 65:24. Before they call, I will answer. While they are still speaking, I will hear. Read that twice, because the sequence is broken on purpose. Before they call, I will answer. The answer precedes the request. That is not how anything works. That is a violation of causality, and God states it as a plain description of his practice. And while they are still speaking, I will hear. The hearing overlaps the speaking. There's no gap, no transmission time, no processing queue. You are not sending a message that has to travel. Here's why this matters for a lonely person. One of loneliness's cruelest tricks is the sense of delay, that you called out and it went into a void, and now you're waiting, and the waiting itself becomes the evidence. He didn't answer. It's been months. It's been years. I said something into the dark, and nothing came back. And Isaiah 65:24 says, the answer was already moving before the question left you, which means the thing you are currently interpreting as silence may be an answer in transit. The things happening in your life right now, the ones that make no sense, the closed door, the strange delay, the person who unexpectedly appeared. Some of those may be responses to prayers you have not prayed yet, set in motion before you knew you'd need them. You are not waiting for God to start. He started before you did. Promise 33. The prayer of a righteous person is powerful and effective. James 5:16. And then James does something brilliant. He immediately gives an example, and the example is chosen to destroy your excuse. Elijah was a human being, even as we are. He prayed earnestly that it would not rain, and it did not rain on the land for 3.5 years. Elijah was a human being, even as we are. James knows exactly what you're going to do with the prayer of a righteous person. You're going to say, well, that's not me. That's for the righteous ones, the saints, the people with the prayer lives. So James picks the most spectacular prayer warrior in Israelite history, the man who called fire down from heaven who stopped the sky, and says he was a guy, same species, same equipment. And James's readers knew the rest of Elijah's story. Right after the greatest spiritual victory in his life, Elijah heard one threat from one woman and ran into the wilderness and sat under a broom tree and asked God to kill him. I have had enough, Lord. Take my life. The fire caller was suicidal within 24 hours of the fire. That's the man James holds up as your example. Not because he was steady, because he was human and his prayers still moved the sky. So whatever you think disqualifies your prayers, that you're inconsistent, that you doubt, that you've been angry at God, that you had a spiritual collapse last week, Elijah had all of it, and it did not rain for 3.5 years. You are not less human than Elijah. That's the whole argument. That's all the qualification the verse requires. Promise 34. The Spirit himself intercedes for us through wordless groans. Romans 8:26. And this is God's answer to the night you cannot pray. In the same way, the Spirit helps us in our weakness. We do not know what we ought to pray for, but the Spirit himself intercedes for us through wordless groans. We do not know what we ought to pray for. Paul just says it, flatly. He doesn't treat it as a failure state. He treats it as the normal human condition. We don't know, not sometimes, as a baseline. And the arrangement God has made for that is not to teach you better prayers. It's to have someone pray inside you. The word for intercedes carries the sense of stepping in on behalf of someone. And wordless groans. The Greek is a sound without articulation. Not a prayer with poor grammar, a sound with no words at all. A groan, the noise a body makes under weight. And Paul says, that's intercession, that's the Spirit in you praying. And the groan you thought was your failure to pray was actually the sound of the prayer. Then verse 27, and he who searches our hearts knows the mind of the Spirit, because the Spirit intercedes for God's people in accordance with the will of God. Look at the loop. The Spirit prays in you. The Father searches your heart and reads what the Spirit is saying there. God is talking to God through your chest about your life, and you are the room it's happening in. So if you have been lying awake, unable to form a sentence toward heaven, if all you have is a weight and a sound and no words, you have not failed to pray. You are at that exact moment hosting a conversation inside the Trinity about your own life. You just can't hear the other end of it. The groan is the prayer. It's already fluent. Somebody's translating. Promise 35. He inclines his ear to me. Psalm 116:2. Because he turned his ear to me, I will call on him as long as I live. The image is physical, and I want you to see it exactly. To incline your ear is to lean in. It's what you do when someone is speaking too quietly for you to hear from where you're standing. You bend down. You put your ear closer to their mouth. It's what you do with a child. It's what you do at a hospital bed when the person can barely make sound, and you lean over the rail and put your ear inches from their lips because you do not want to miss a single word. That's the posture the psalmist ascribes to God. God leans in. God bends down to hear you. The God who spoke the universe into being, who does not need to lean, who has no ears, who is not localized in space, is described here as bending toward a human mouth so as not to miss what's being said. And here's what that means about the volume of your prayers. He inclines because you're quiet. The leaning is for the whisper. If you were shouting, he wouldn't need to. The posture assumes a small voice, your barely audible prayer, the one you can hardly form, the one that's more exhale than speech. That's the one he's leaning in for. That's what the posture is designed for. And notice the psalmist's conclusion. Not, so I will pray harder. He says, I will call on him as long as I live. He found out God leans in, and it made him a lifelong caller. The discovery didn't make him louder. It made him constant. He's already leaning. You don't have to raise your voice. Just talk. We're at 35, 65 to go. I told you this would take a while. I want to check in with you because if you're the person I made this for, you might be at a hard hour right now. If it's night where you are, you don't have to make it to morning by yourself. You just have to make it to the next promise, that's all. Just the next one. Stay with me. Promise 36. Call to me, and I will answer you and tell you great and unsearchable things you do not know. Jeremiah 33:3. And the context, this is the thing that undoes me about this verse, is that Jeremiah is in prison when God says it. Read verse 1. While Jeremiah was still confined in the courtyard of the guard, the word of the Lord came to him a second time. He is locked up. He's been imprisoned by his own king for telling the truth. The city is under siege. The Babylonians are outside the walls, and everything Jeremiah spent his entire life warning about is happening exactly as he said. And his reward for being right is a cell. And in that cell, God says, call to me and I will tell you great and unsearchable things. The word for unsearchable means fortified, inaccessible, things you could not reach by any effort of your own, walled off knowledge, things behind a barrier, and God says that to a man behind a barrier. In a locked courtyard, God offers to open something that cannot be opened. Here's what I want you to see. Jeremiah's confinement did not reduce his access to God by 1 inch. The walls that held his body had no jurisdiction over the conversation, and in fact, the second word of the Lord came to him in prison. The confinement produced more revelation, not less. If you are confined tonight, by circumstance, by illness, by a situation you cannot exit, by 4 walls that have become your whole world, the walls are not a barrier to this. Call to me, God says, to a prisoner. Some of the greatest things God has ever said were said to people who could not leave the room. Your circumstances have locked a lot of doors. They have not locked that one. Promise 37. Ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be opened. Matthew 7:7. And the tense is the thing. The Greek verbs are continuous. It's not ask once. It's keep asking, keep seeking, keep knocking. The promise attaches to persistence, not to a single attempt, which is an admission built into the verse. If it worked instantly every time, you wouldn't need a continuous tense. The grammar itself concedes that there will be knocking that does not immediately produce an opening. But look at what Jesus says next, because it's the argument underneath the promise. Which of you, if your son asks for bread, will give him a stone? Or if he asks for a fish, will give him a snake? If you then, though you are evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father in heaven give good gifts to those who ask him? Though you are evil, Jesus just calls his audience evil in passing as a premise and then argues from it. Even you, flawed, selfish, compromised as you are, wouldn't hand your hungry kid a rock. You don't have to be a good person to not do that. Your bad nature still isn't bad enough to feed your child stones. How much more then, the Father? That's the argument. It's not God is nice. It's your capacity for cruelty has a flaw, and God's capacity for goodness has no ceiling, and the distance between those two facts is where your prayers live. So keep knocking. Not because God is reluctant and needs to be worn down. That's a different parable and a different point. Keep knocking because the door is answered by someone who could not hand you a stone. Whatever comes through that door will be bread. It may not be the bread you pictured. It will not be a stone. Promise 38. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. Exodus 14:14. And you have to picture the scene to feel it. Israel is on the shore of the Red Sea, water in front, Egypt's chariots behind, the most advanced military technology of the ancient world closing fast. There is no third direction. They are in a box, and everyone can see it. And the people turn on Moses, and their line is one of the most human lines in Scripture. Was it because there were no graves in Egypt that you brought us to the desert to die? That's panic. That's sarcasm born of terror. That's people who genuinely believe they have hours to live. And Moses says, "The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. Be still." With chariots coming, the Hebrew is stronger than be still. It carries the sense of stop, cease, let go, drop it. It's the same root as in be still and know that I am God. It doesn't mean stand there peacefully. It means stop doing, cease your activity, take your hands off. That is the single hardest instruction in the Bible. Because being still is not passive. Being still with an army behind you is the most violent act of will available to a human being. Every cell in your body wants to run, to fight, to do something, and stillness means overriding all of it and standing in place while the thing you fear gets closer. And here's the pattern for the lonely. When you're alone, you do things. You fill the space. You scroll, you text people you shouldn't. You go back to what hurt you, you take the call. You say yes to the thing you don't want because it's better than the silence. Loneliness makes us frantic, and frantic people make decisions they spend years undoing. And God says, be still. The sea is going to open. Not because you found the trick, because I'm going to open it. You do not have to solve your loneliness tonight. You are not required to fix this. There is a sea in front of you and an army behind you, and the instruction is, stop. The fighting is not your assignment. Standing is your assignment. Stand still. Watch what the water does. Promise 39, be still and know that I am God. Psalm 46:10. And the context is chaos. Read the psalm from the top. God is our refuge and strength, an ever-present help in trouble. Therefore we will not fear, though the earth give way and the mountains fall into the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam and the mountains quake with their surging. The earth giving way, mountains falling into the sea, waters roaring. This is apocalyptic imagery. The psalmist is describing the total collapse of the physical world, the undoing of creation itself. And then, be still and know that I am God. Not in a garden, not in a quiet room, in the middle of the mountains falling into the sea. The Hebrew, rapha, means to let go, to slacken, to drop your hands. Some translate it, cease striving. One rendering that has always stayed with me, let your hands fall. Let your hands fall and know that I am God. Because that's the connection the verse makes, and it's not obvious. The knowing depends on the letting go. You cannot know He is God while your hands are still full of the situation. As long as you're holding it, you're the one holding it. And you will experience your life as a thing you are responsible for keeping in the air. Put it down and you'll find out who's actually been holding it. And the second half of verse 10, which people skip, I will be exalted among the nations, I will be exalted in the earth. That's the reason for stillness. It's not therapeutic, it's not self-care, it's acknowledgement. Be still, because He is God, because the outcome does not in fact depend on your grip. If you are white-knuckling your life tonight, if you have been holding something together by sheer force of will for so long you can't remember what your hands feel like, open. The instruction is, let them fall. The mountains can go into the sea. He is still God. And you were never the one keeping the mountains up. Promise 40. My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. 2 Corinthians 12:9. And this is the promise for the prayer God said no to. Paul had a thorn in the flesh. He never tells us what it was. Scholars have guessed for 2,000 years. Illness, eye trouble, persecution, a person. We don't know, and I've come to think that's deliberate, because it means everyone can put their own thing in the blank. And Paul says, 3 times I pleaded with the Lord to take it away from me. 3 times. And pleaded is not a mild word. This is begging, and God said no. Let that land. The Apostle Paul, the man who wrote a third of the New Testament, who was caught up to the third heaven, who planted the church across the empire, begged God 3 times for relief, and the answer was no. If God said no to Paul, then God saying no to you is not evidence of your standing with Him. But here's what He said instead. My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. He didn't remove the thorn. He gave Paul something else, and He gave it in the present tense, is sufficient, not will be, right now. The grace is already the right size for the thing you are currently carrying, and made perfect in weakness. The word means brought to completion, brought to its full expression. God's power reaches its fullest form in weakness, not despite it, in it. Weakness is not the obstacle to God's power. It's the medium, which means your weakness tonight, the thing you'd most want removed, the thing you've begged 3 times or 3,000 times about, is not the reason God can't work. It's the material He works in. And Paul's conclusion is genuinely insane. Therefore I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me. He stopped asking for the thorn to go. He started bragging about it. That's not resignation. That's a man who found out what the thorn was for. Your loneliness may be a thorn God does not remove. And I'm not going to pretend that's easy. Paul begged 3 times, which means he found it unbearable before he found it useful. But if it stays, it will not stay empty. Something will be made perfect in it. That's the promise, not the removal, the sufficiency. Part 6. The promises of company. Promise. 41. 2 are better than 1. Ecclesiastes 4:9-12. And Ecclesiastes is the most brutally honest book in the Bible, which is why this passage carries weight. 2 are better than 1, because they have a good return for their labor. If either of them falls down, one can help the other up. But pity anyone who falls and has no one to help them up. Also, if 2 lie down together, they will keep warm. But how can one keep warm alone? Though one may be overpowered, 2 can defend themselves. A cord of 3 strands is not quickly broken. Now, this is a hard passage for a lonely person, and I'm not going to pretend otherwise. Pity anyone who falls and has no one to help them up is not a comfort. It's a diagnosis, and it might be your diagnosis, and Scripture states it without softening. But look at what the preacher is doing. He is validating you. He is saying, being alone is genuinely worse. It is objectively harder. You are not weak for finding it hard. It is hard. It is measurably harder, and God's own book says so in plain language. 2 people falling have a recovery mechanism. 1 person falling has a problem. That's not a character flaw. That's physics. So the first gift of this passage is that it refuses to spiritualize your situation. It doesn't tell you that you should be fine alone because you have God. It says, no, you need people, and the lack of them is a real deficit, and anyone who tells you otherwise is not reading this book. And then, a cord of 3 strands is not quickly broken. 3, not 2. He's been talking about 2 the whole passage, and then suddenly there's a 3rd strand. The preacher doesn't explain it, but the jump is deliberate. 2 is better than 1, but the unbreakable configuration has a 3rd strand in it. And Christians have always read that 3rd strand as the one who is with you, whether or not the 2nd strand ever arrives. So here is what I want you to do with this. Do not let anyone tell you your loneliness is a spiritual failure. Ecclesiastes says it's a real hardship, but also do not conclude that you are a single strand. You have never been a single strand. Right now, tonight at minimum, you are 2. And the arithmetic of the chord says that 2 strands are already strong. And keep your eyes open for the 3rd. It usually shows up in a way you didn't predict. Promise 42. Where 2 or 3 gather in my name, there am I with them. Matthew 18:20. We usually read this as a promise about crowds. You need a group, you need a congregation, you need a room. But Jesus said 2 or 3, 2. That's the smallest possible plural. He set the threshold at the absolute minimum a group can be, not 10, which was the number required for a synagogue quorum in Jewish practice. 2. He deliberately set it below the recognized standard, which means the church in its smallest legitimate form is 2 people and Christ. If you have 1 person, 1 friend who calls, 1 sister, 1 man at work who you can be honest with, 1 voice on a phone, that is a church. That's not a consolation prize version of church. That's the threshold Jesus himself named. And the context matters. Matthew 18 is about reconciliation, about what to do when someone sins against you, about going to them, about the process of restoring a relationship. This verse sits in the middle of a passage about repairing broken connection. That's the subject. So Jesus is saying when relationship is being repaired, when 2 people are doing the hard work of coming back together, I'm in the room. If you are estranged from someone tonight, if there is a person you've lost to a fight or a silence or a slow drift, and you're considering reaching out, Matthew 18:20 says the moment 2 of you gather to repair it, he's there. He shows up specifically for that, 2 or 3. That's all he asked for. You may be closer to a full church than you think, Promise 43. Carry each other's burdens, Galatians 6:2. Carry each other's burdens, and in this way you will fulfill the law of Christ. Now this is a command, not obviously a promise. But hear it as a promise, because there's one hidden inside it. If you are commanded to carry other people's burdens, then other people are commanded to carry yours. The command implies a system. It's not a one-directional obligation where you serve and nobody serves you. It's mutual by construction, each other's. Which means there are people in the world under orders to help you. And here's the thing, lonely people almost always get wrong. When you're isolated, the instinct is to wait to be found, to wait for someone to notice, to reach out, to check in. And the not being checked on becomes the proof that nobody cares. But Galatians 6:2 doesn't say wait for your burden to be carried. It says carry someone else's. There's an odd mechanism here that anyone who's tried it can confirm. The fastest route out of the pit is often to lower a rope to someone else in it. Not because your problem gets solved. It doesn't. But because the burden-carrying system only works if someone starts, and the person who starts stops being alone the moment they do. And notice the phrase, the law of Christ. Paul says burden-carrying is the law of Christ. Not a nice extra, the law, the whole of it, compressed. This is what Jesus did. He carried what we couldn't. And when you carry someone's weight, you are doing the single most Christ-like thing available to a human being. You feel like you have nothing to give. You have a shoulder. Somebody within a mile of you is under something they can't lift, and they feel exactly as invisible as you do. Go find them. That's the way out. It's counterintuitive and it's real, and it has worked for 2,000 years. Promise 44. A friend loves at all times. Proverbs 17:17. A friend loves at all times, and a brother is born for a time of adversity. At all times. That's the whole promise, and it's a very high bar. Not at convenient times. Not when it's mutual. Not when you're doing well and pleasant to be around. At all times, which necessarily includes the times when you are not lovable, not fun, not returning texts, not okay. Most of what we call friendship does not meet this standard, and that's why loneliness happens even in a crowded life. You can have 40 people in your contacts and no one who loves at all times. You can have a full calendar and be starving, and a brother is born for a time of adversity. The sense is that adversity is what brotherhood is for. It's the purpose, not the exception. Adversity is the condition that reveals what a brother is. Here's why this is a promise and not just a description. Because you have one. Hebrews 2:11 says, Jesus is not ashamed to call them brothers and sisters. Not ashamed. That phrasing implies there'd be grounds. He knows exactly what he'd be associating himself with, and he's still using the word brother out loud. And Proverbs 18:24 puts it directly, there is a friend who sticks closer than a brother. Closer than a brother. That's the comparative. Closer than the strongest bond in the ancient world. So if you're taking inventory tonight and finding that nobody in your life loves at all times, I believe you. That's a real finding, and I won't argue with it. But your inventory is missing an entry. There is a friend on the list who has already demonstrated what at all times means, and he demonstrated it on the worst day in human history, and he hasn't revised the policy since. Promise 45. I no longer call you servants, I have called you friends. John 15:15, and this is the verse where the whole architecture of religion changes. I no longer call you servants because a servant does not know his master's business. Instead, I have called you friends, for everything that I learned from my Father I have made known to you. Servant to friend. That's a category change, and it's enormous. A servant has a function. A servant is defined by output. The relationship is transactional by design. You do the work, you receive the wage, and the master's inner life is none of your concern. A servant does not know his master's business, and that's not cruelty, that's the structure. And Jesus says, I'm dissolving that structure. You're friends now, and his reason for the reclassification is specific. Because I told you everything. Friendship is defined here by disclosure. The mark of a friend is that you know their business. You've been let in. So the difference between a servant and a friend, in Jesus' own definition, is that a friend knows what's going on. Now think about what that means. If you have ever felt that your relationship with God is a job, that you're an employee, that your standing depends on performance, that he tolerates you in exchange for output, Jesus terminated that arrangement personally in the upper room on the last night of his life. And he said it to Judas. Judas was in that room. Jesus said, I have called you friends, to a group that included the man who would sell him within hours. Then in Gethsemane, when Judas came with the guards and kissed him, Jesus said, friend, do what you came for. Friend, at the betrayal, to the betrayer. I don't fully know what to do with that, but I know this. If that word survived the kiss in the garden, there is nothing you have done that has changed your classification. You are not staff. You have never been staff. You are a friend, and he told you everything he knows. Part 7. The Promises for the Wilderness. Promise 46. I will lead her into the wilderness and speak tenderly to her. Hosea 2:14. And this reframes everything about the season you're in. Therefore I am now going to allure her. I will lead her into the wilderness and speak tenderly to her. Lead her into the wilderness. God does the leading. The wilderness is not where she wandered off to. It's where he took her. And why? To speak tenderly. The Hebrew for speak tenderly is literally speak to her heart. It's the language of courtship. It's what a young man does when he's trying to win a woman, the words you use when you're wooing someone. So God's stated purpose for the wilderness is romance. And look at the word allure. It means to entice, to persuade, to seduce. God is describing himself as a suitor, drawing someone away from a crowd to have a conversation that could only happen in private. Why the wilderness? Because Israel had too many other lovers. Hosea's whole book is about a wife who kept leaving. Hosea was told to marry a woman who would be unfaithful and to keep taking her back, as a living illustration of God and Israel. And the diagnosis was that she couldn't hear him over the noise of everything else she'd attached herself to. So he takes her somewhere with no noise. The wilderness is not punishment in Hosea 2. It's a room with no distractions. It's God clearing the calendar. It's a place where finally there's nothing else to listen to. And then verse 15, there I will give her back her vineyards and will make the valley of Achor a door of hope. The valley of Achor was the valley of trouble. It was where Achan was executed in Joshua, a place whose name was literally shame and disaster. And God says, I'll make that valley a door, not a detour around it. The valley itself becomes the doorway. If you are in a wilderness season, if everything got quiet in a way you didn't ask for, if the people fell away and the noise stopped, and you find yourself somewhere empty, consider that you may not have wandered here. You may have been led here by someone who has something to say to you that could not be said anywhere else, over anything else. He didn't bring you to the wilderness to punish you. He brought you here because you couldn't hear him in town. Promise 47. He led them by a straight way to a city where they could settle. Psalm 107:7. And you need the verses before it. Some wandered in desert wastelands, finding no way to a city where they could settle. They were hungry and thirsty, and their lives ebbed away. Then they cried out to the Lord in their trouble, and he delivered them from their distress. He led them by a straight way to a city where they could settle. Finding no way to a city where they could settle. That's one of the best descriptions of loneliness I know. Not that they were suffering exactly, that they were unable to find the place where they could stop. They were moving, and there was nowhere that would hold them, no door with their name on it, nowhere to settle. Their lives ebbed away. The Hebrew suggests fainting, the soul draining out. It's the exhaustion of prolonged homelessness, not just the bodies, the selves. And then 4 words, then they cried out. That's the hinge. The whole psalm turns on it 4 separate times. It's a refrain. Wanderers cried out, prisoners cried out, the sick cried out, sailors in a storm cried out, and every single time he delivered them from their distress. The cry is what they had. It's all they had. They didn't fix anything. They didn't find the city. They made a noise, and then he led them by a straight way. A straight way. Look at that. They had been wandering. The word implies circling, going nowhere, retracing. And the path he put them on was straight, which means the wandering had a terminus, and the terminus was not a destination they found. It was a road he put them on. If you have been circling, if you feel like you have been going around the same problem, the same season, the same pain for years, covering enormous distance and arriving nowhere, the psalm says the circling ends with a cry, and what follows the cry is a straight line to a place you can stop. There is a city. There is a place where you settle, and the way there is straighter than the way you've been walking. Promise 48. I will restore to you the years the locusts have eaten. Joel 2:25. I will repay you for the years the locusts have eaten. Years, not days. Years. Joel is writing after a locust plague, a real one, an ecological catastrophe that stripped the land bare. Locusts don't damage crops, they erase them. A swarm passes and there is nothing. not a reduced harvest. Nothing. And the loss isn't one season, because the trees and vines take years to come back. That's why God says years. The plague was months, the damage was years. And he says, I will repay them. Now think about what that promise is claiming. Time is the one thing that cannot be given back. You can restore money, property, health, relationships, but not time. It only goes one way. Everyone knows this. It's the one loss that's structurally permanent. And God says, I'll repay the years. I don't fully understand how that works, and I'm not going to pretend I do. But I notice that the God making the claim is not subject to the constraint. The one who made time is not standing inside it wondering how to reverse it. And look at how it happens in Scripture. Joseph lost 13 years to a pit and a prison and a false accusation. And when he named his sons, he named the first one, God has made me forget all my trouble. And the second, God has made me fruitful in the land of my suffering. In the land of his suffering, not after he left it. The fruitfulness happened in the place that cost him everything. And then his brothers show up, and he tells them, you meant it for evil, God meant it for good. The 13 years weren't erased. They were repurposed. They turned out to be the mechanism. If you have lost years, if you're looking back at a decade you can't account for, at a marriage that took your 30s, at an illness that took your youth, at a loneliness that has eaten seasons of your life you will never get back, hear the specific wording. He didn't say the locusts didn't come. He said he'd repay the years they ate. Something is being restored, and the accounting is being done by someone who is not bound by the calendar you're trapped in. Promise 49. He knows the way that I take. When he has tested me, I will come forth as gold. Job 23:10. And you have to know where Job is when he says it. Job has lost everything. 10 children in one day. His wealth, his health. His wife tells him to curse God and die. His friends have arrived and spent chapters explaining that this is his own fault. And Job is in the middle of the most agonized speech in the book. Read verse 8 and 9, right before this. But if I go to the east, he is not there. If I go to the west, I do not find him. When he is at work in the north, I do not see him. When he turns to the south, I catch no glimpse of him. That is a man who cannot find God. He has checked every direction, east, west, north, south, all four. He's systematically searching the entire compass, and God is not in any of it. And then, immediately after, verse 10, but he knows the way that I take. Do you see what he just did? He said, I can't find him, and he knows exactly where I am. That's the whole thing. That's the entire teaching of this video in one verse. Job's inability to locate God has no bearing on God's ability to locate Job. The search is one-directional, and only one of the two parties is having any difficulty. Job doesn't say, he'll show up. He doesn't say, I feel him. He says, he knows the way I take. My route is known. Whatever this is, I'm not lost. I'm just unable to see the one who is watching me walk. When he has tested me, I will come forth as gold. Gold is refined by heat. The ore goes in the fire, and what comes out is the pure metal, and the refiner knows it's done when he can see his own face in the surface. Job doesn't know why. He never gets an explanation. Read the whole book. God shows up in chapter 38 and answers essentially nothing. Job gets God, not answers. But from inside the worst suffering in Scripture, with all four directions empty, he says, he knows the way that I take. If you can't find God tonight, you are in the company of Job. And Job was right about everything that mattered. You're not lost. You're just in the dark. And those are different. Promise 50. Those who sow with tears will reap with songs of joy. Psalm 126, 5-6. Halfway, 50 promises down. Those who sow with tears will reap with songs of joy. Those who go out weeping, carrying seed to sow, will return with songs of joy, carrying sheaves with them. The image is agricultural and specific. Sowing is not the happy part of farming. Sowing is when you take grain, food, actual edible food you could eat today, and you bury it in dirt. In a famine year, that's an agonizing act. Your family is hungry, and you're taking food and throwing it in the ground on the theory that months from now, something will come up. Sowing is loss that you perform on purpose because you believe in a harvest. And the psalmist says, some people sow with tears. They're weeping while they do it. They're burying food they need right now while hungry and crying because the act itself feels like madness. And the promise, they will reap with songs of joy. Notice the arithmetic. You bury one seed, you harvest a sheaf, a whole bundle. What comes back is not what went in. It's not repayment, it's multiplication. And notice, will return with songs of joy, carrying sheaves. Return. They go out and they come back. Same person, same field, different load. They walked out with a bag of seed and tears on their face, and they walk back with an armful of harvest. Here's what I want you to hear. Your tears right now may not be waste. They may be sowing. I know that's hard. I know it can sound like a cheap way to make suffering sound productive, and I don't mean it cheaply. Some tears are just tears. But the psalm insists that in God's economy, grief carried faithfully into the ground has an agricultural function. It is not evaporating, it's in the dirt, doing something. You are not wasting this season. You are sowing in it, and you're doing it crying. And that's the exact person this promise was written for. 50 down. 50 to go. Stay with me. The second half is where it gets good. Part 8. The promises of provision. Promise 51. My God will meet all your needs according to the riches of his glory. Philippians 4:19. And Paul wrote it in prison, which changes it entirely. And my God will meet all your needs according to the riches of his glory in Christ Jesus. Now, read the verses just before. The Philippians had sent Paul a gift. He's thanking them, and in the middle of the thank you, he says something extraordinary. I have learned to be content whatever the circumstances. I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. I have learned. It wasn't natural, it was acquired. Paul is telling you that contentment is a skill, and he had to be taught it. And the classroom was hunger. He learned it by being hungry. He learned it by being in want. The curriculum was deprivation. That's why when he says, my God will meet all your needs, you have to take it seriously. This is not a man who has never tested it. And the phrase, according to the riches of his glory, that's the standard of measure. Not out of his riches, which would just mean the source. According to, meaning proportionate to. The supply is scaled to his wealth, not to your emergency. If a billionaire gives you $100, that's out of his riches. If he gives according to his riches, the number is very different. And all your needs, not wants. Paul is precise. He's not promising you the life you wanted. He's promising sufficiency. And he's promising it from a jail cell where he had almost nothing and had learned to be content anyway. If your need tonight is companionship, if what's missing is a person, then that need is on the list. Loneliness is not a luxury complaint. God made you needing people. He said it himself before the fall, before anything went wrong. It is not good for the man to be alone. That was God's own assessment of a world with no sin in it. Your need for another human being is not weakness, it's design, and he meets needs according to the riches of his glory. Promise 52. Look at the birds of the air, they do not sow or reap. Matthew 6:26. Look at the birds of the air. They do not sow or reap or store away in barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not much more valuable than they? Jesus says, look, it's an imperative. Go look at a bird. And this is not a metaphor he's asking you to consider abstractly. He's asking you to physically observe something. There's a bird outside your window right now in whatever city you're in. And it did not plan for today. It has no store. It has no strategy. And it's alive. Every bird you have ever seen is a bird that was fed. You have never in your life seen a starving bird, not because it doesn't happen, but because the overwhelming, unremarkable, boring norm is that birds eat. The system works so reliably that you've never once thought about it. There is a vast, invisible provision happening constantly at a scale you can't perceive, involving billions of creatures who have no idea it's being arranged. And Jesus says, you're worth more than they are. Then verse 27, can any one of you by worrying add a single hour to your life? That's not a rhetorical flourish. That's an audit. He's asking you to check your own records. In your entire life of worrying, and if you're lonely, you have worried enormously, at 3 in the morning in loops. Has it ever once produced an hour? Has it ever produced anything? The honest answer is no, not once. It has cost you hours. It has never delivered one. And then verse 34, the closer. Therefore, do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. Look at that concession. Each day has enough trouble of its own. Jesus is not saying the trouble isn't real. He's saying today is already full. Don't import tomorrow's. There's no room. The day's at capacity. Your job is today, just this one. The birds are handling it. So are you, whether you can feel it or not. Promise 53. The Lord is my shepherd. I lack nothing. Psalm 23:1. Back to the shepherd, because we need the first line. The Lord is my shepherd, I lack nothing. Some translations, I shall not want. The Hebrew means, I will not lack. I will not be in need. Now, David is making a claim that his life did not obviously support. He wrote psalms from caves. He was hunted for years by a king. He lost a child. His own son led a rebellion against him, and he had to flee his own capital on foot, weeping, barefoot, going up the Mount of Olives with his head covered. And he says, I lack nothing. He's not claiming he had everything he wanted. He's claiming a shepherd. And here's the logic of the psalm. The possession of the shepherd is the lack of nothing. It's not that David had a shepherd and also had everything. It's that having the shepherd is what lacking nothing means. The first clause is the reason for the second, and it's the only reason offered. Sheep are not smart animals. They don't find water. They don't find pasture. They wander into ravines and get stuck on their backs and cannot get up. That's a real thing, a cast sheep, unable to right itself, and it will die there unless a shepherd comes and rolls it back onto its feet. The sheep's entire welfare is external to the sheep. Everything it needs comes from someone else's competence. That is not an insult. That's the Psalm's whole argument. You are not equipped to secure your own life, and the good news is that the job was never assigned to you. If you are lonely tonight and taking inventory of everything you lack, and the list is real, I'm not going to tell you it isn't. David would say, you're counting the wrong column. Count the shepherd. Then the sentence, I lack nothing, becomes something you can say without lying from a cave on the worst day of your life. Promise 54. Give us this day our daily bread. Matthew 6:11. Inside the Lord's Prayer. Daily bread, today's. Jesus could have taught us to ask for a month's supply, for security, for a reserve. He taught us to ask for today's portion, today, and the model is manna. Exodus 16. God feeds Israel in the wilderness with bread that appears every morning, and the rule is, Gather only what you need for today, and if you gathered extra, if you tried to store it, it bred worms and stank. God built spoilage into the system on purpose. Why would he do that? Because a month's supply in the tent would have meant a month without needing him. The perishability was the relationship. It forced a daily encounter. Every single morning for 40 years, 2 million people woke up and had to go out and find that God had come through again. 14,000 consecutive mornings of evidence. They never got to be independent. And that was the gift, though it certainly didn't feel like one. Here's what this means for a lonely person. You want the whole thing solved. You want the season fixed, the person to arrive, the guarantee, the reserve. You want enough grace in the tent to get you through the year so you can stop feeling this way. And God gives today's. That's not stinginess. That's a relationship structured so that you cannot stop meeting him. If he gave you the whole supply, you'd take it and go, and both of you know it. So the question is not, can I survive this for a year? You don't have a year's grace. You have today's, and it's sufficient for today, and that is exactly how much you need, because today is the only day that is currently happening. Tomorrow there'll be more on the ground. There has been every morning so far. Promise 55. Delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. Psalm 37:4. And this verse is misread constantly, so let's read it properly. The common misread, delight in God, and he'll give you what you want. God as a mechanism, put in worship, get out results. But read the Hebrew sense. Delight yourself. The word means to make yourself soft, to take exquisite pleasure in, to be pliable toward. It's a word about being shaped by pleasure. And then, he will give you the desires of your heart. 2 readings, and both are true. He gives you what you desire, or he gives you the desires themselves. He installs them. He plants what your heart wants. And that second reading is where the actual comfort is, because if God is giving you your desires, then the desires you have are not accidents. The longing you feel, the deep one, the one you're most embarrassed by, the ache for someone to know you, that may be a given thing, placed on purpose. Your loneliness may not be a malfunction. It may be a desire God put in you because he intends to fill it, and the ache is just the shape of the thing that hasn't arrived yet. You do not long for things that don't exist. Nobody is thirsty in a universe without water. The thirst is evidence of the water. That's the argument C.S. Lewis made, and it holds. Hunger implies food. The desire for companionship implies that companionship is a real thing that real people have, and that your desire for it is a compass, not a defect. And read verse 3 and 5, the ones around it. Trust in the Lord and do good. Commit your way to the Lord. Trust in him. The delighting is surrounded by trusting and committing. It's not a technique. It's a whole posture. Delight in him, and let the desires he gave you be evidence of what he intends to do, rather than evidence of what you're missing. Part 9. The promises of his timing. Promise. 56. He has made everything beautiful in its time. Ecclesiastes 3:11. And the second half of the verse is the part nobody quotes. He has made everything beautiful in its time. He has also set eternity in the human heart, yet no one can fathom what God has done from beginning to end. 3 claims, and their intention, and the preacher lets them stay in tension. 1. Everything is beautiful in its time, not now, in its time, which is an admission that right now it might not be. The beauty is scheduled, and you're not the one holding the schedule. 2. He has set eternity in the human heart. This is the strangest line in Ecclesiastes. There is something in you that is calibrated to forever, sitting inside a creature with a lifespan. You have an eternal instrument in a temporal body. That's why nothing here satisfies. You're measuring finite things with an infinite ruler. 3. No one can fathom what God has done from beginning to end. You have eternity in you and you cannot see it. You have the longing and not the vision. You know there's more and you can't get to it. The preacher is describing your exact condition and refusing to resolve it. And here's why this is a promise, because your dissatisfaction is explained. You are not broken. You are correctly calibrated equipment in an environment it wasn't designed for. The reason nothing fills the hole is that the hole is eternity-shaped, and everything on offer here is temporary. So the loneliness that doesn't go away, even in a crowded room, even at a good party, even in a decent relationship, that's not you failing at contentment. That's eternity in your heart doing exactly what it was installed to do, which is to keep you from mistaking any of this for home. Everything is beautiful in its time. This isn't its time yet. That's not a failure. That's a calendar, Promise 57. There is a time for everything. Ecclesiastes 3, 1-8, the famous passage. There is a time for everything and a season for every activity under the heavens, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to search and a time to give up. Read it as a lonely person and one line jumps out, a time to refrain from embracing. There is a time for that. It's on the list. It's in Scripture, sitting there in the same rhythm as the planting and the harvesting and the being born. And it is not marked as an error, which means the season you are in, the season with no embrace in it, is a named season. It's on God's calendar. It's not a gap in the calendar. It's an entry. Now this is a hard comfort, and I want to be honest about that. It doesn't make the season shorter, but there's something in being named. There's a difference between a wilderness that's on the map and a wilderness that isn't. Both are hard. Only one of them means you're still on the route. And look at the structure of the whole passage. Every single item is paired. Weeping is paired with laughing. Mourning is paired with dancing. Refraining from embracing is paired with embracing. Nothing on that list stands alone. Every season in Ecclesiastes 3 has a partner season, and the partner is its opposite, which means structurally, in the logic of the passage, there is also a time to embrace. It's the other half of your line. Your season has a counterpart, and the counterpart is the exact reversal of what you're in. There's a time to refrain. You're in it. It's real, and it's named, and it's hard. And it is one half of a pair. Promise 58. Wait for the Lord. Be strong and take heart. Psalm 27:14. Wait for the Lord. Be strong and take heart and wait for the Lord. He says it twice. Wait, then wait again, with be strong and take heart wedged between them. Like the strength is what you need in order to keep waiting, because waiting takes strength. We think of waiting as passive, as the absence of action, as what you do when you can't do anything. But the psalmist puts be strong in the middle of it, which means waiting is exertion. It costs something. It's work. The Hebrew for wait, kava, is related to the word for a cord or a rope. The root sense involves tension, twisting, being stretched taut. It's not idle. It's a rope under load. Waiting on God is a rope pulled tight between 2 points, holding tension, not slack. And read the verse before it, because it's a confession. I remain confident of this. I will see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. In the land of the living, not after I die, not in heaven, here. David is saying, I expect to see God's goodness in this life, on this earth, in this body, before this is over. That's a defiant sentence. That's a man refusing to concede that the good part is only in the next world. And then, wait for the Lord. Here's what I want you to take. Your waiting is not nothing. It is the single most misunderstood spiritual discipline there is, because it looks identical to doing nothing, while being one of the most demanding things a person can do. Nobody applauds waiting. There's no evidence of it. You cannot show anyone you're waiting. But God calls it strength. He put "be strong" right in the middle of it, twice surrounded by weight, like the waiting is the wall and the strength is the mortar. You are not doing nothing. You are holding a rope under tension. That's an act of faith, and it counts. Promise 59. Those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. Isaiah 40:31. And the order of the images is backwards, which is the point. But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint. Soar, run, walk. That's descending order. It should climb, walk, then run, then soar, building to a crescendo. Instead, Isaiah puts the spectacular thing first and ends with walking, because walking is the hard one. Anybody can soar for a moment. Everyone has had the mountaintop, the answered prayer, the week where God felt close. Soaring is easy. It's also rare and brief, and you don't control it. Running is harder, but it's still finite. You can grit through a run. It has an end. Walking is the one that breaks people. Walking is Tuesday. Walking is the 4th year of the same season. Walking is getting up and doing it again, with no drama, no rescue, no visible change, and doing it again tomorrow. There's no adrenaline in walking. Nobody's watching. It just goes on. And Isaiah ends there. They will walk and not be faint, because that's the promise you actually need. Not the eagle, the walking. And look at what's before it. Verse 30. Even youths grow tired and weary, and young men stumble and fall. Isaiah's point is that natural strength runs out. The youths, the ones with the most of it, they fall. Human capacity has a bottom, and everyone hits it. But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. The Hebrew suggests exchange, to change, to swap out. It's not topping up your tank, it's a trade. You bring your empty and receive his full. Your strength doesn't get boosted, it gets replaced. That's why it doesn't run out. It was never yours. You will walk and not faint. Not because you have more in you than you thought. Because you're going to run out, and then the exchange happens. Promise 60. Being confident of this, that he who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion. Philippians 1:6. Being confident of this, that he who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion until the day of Christ Jesus. 3 verbs, and none of them are yours. He began it. He will carry it on. He will complete it. You are the work, not the worker. The work. That's a relief if you'll let it be. Because if you're the worker, then the completion depends on your consistency. And you have already seen what your consistency looks like. But if you're the work, if you're the thing being made, then completion depends on the craftsman's commitment, and he has never once abandoned a project. We'll carry it on to completion. The word means to bring fully to its end, to finish, not to make progress, to finish, and until the day of Christ Jesus. That's the deadline. Not next year, not by the time you get your act together. The work runs until the day Christ returns, which means it's not done yet, and it's not supposed to be. You are unfinished. That is the correct state for you to be in. Every uncompleted thing about you tonight is not evidence of failure. It's evidence that you're mid-process, and the process has a date, and the date isn't today. And Paul wrote this to the Philippians, a church he loved, a church that had sent him money in prison, and a church that had problems. 2 women in that congregation were fighting so publicly that Paul names them in the letter, Euodia and Syntyche, and asks them, in a document that would be read aloud to everyone and then to the whole world for 2,000 years to please get along. That's the church he says God will complete. So whatever is unfinished in you, the loneliness, the thing you can't get past, the same failure on repeat, the craftsman has not stopped. He began it. He'll finish it. Your only job is to still be on the bench. Part 10. The promises of his character. Promise 61. God is love. 1 John 4:8. Three words that go further than any other three in Scripture. Not God is loving, not God loves, God is love. It's an identity statement, a statement of essence. John is not describing God's behavior. He's describing God's nature at the deepest level the language can reach, which means God does not love you as a policy. He loves you as a fact of what he is. A fire doesn't decide to be hot. Heat is not the fire's choice, it's the fire's nature. Remove the heat and there's no fire. God cannot stop loving you without ceasing to be God. That is the single most stabilizing sentence available to a human being, because every other love in your life is a decision, and decisions can be revisited. Your parents decided. Your friends decide continuously in 1,000 small choices whether to keep making room for you. Any love that was decided can be undecided, and if you've lived long enough, you've watched it happen. God's love is not a decision. It's an essence, and John doesn't leave it abstract. Verse 9, this is how God showed his love among us. He sent his one and only Son into the world that we might live through him. Verse 10, this is love, not that we loved God, but that he loved us and sent his Son as an atoning sacrifice for our sins. Not that we loved God. John explicitly removes you from the causal chain. Your love is not the reason for his. He specifies that the direction of the affection runs from him toward you and did not originate on your end, which means your current spiritual condition, however cold, however distant, however dry you feel toward him tonight, has no bearing on the temperature of the fire. He is love. You are being loved by something that cannot do otherwise. Promise 62. His compassions never fail. They are new every morning. Lamentations 3:22-23. And you have to know what book you're in. Lamentations. The title tells you everything. It's a funeral dirge for Jerusalem. 5 poems written in the smoking ruins of a destroyed city. The temple is burned. The walls are down. The people are dead or deported. It is the single darkest book in the Old Testament, and it doesn't resolve. It ends on a question mark, and chapter 3 is the bottom. Read what comes before verse 22. He has driven me away and made me walk in darkness rather than light. He has besieged me and surrounded me with bitterness and hardship. He has made me dwell in darkness like those long dead. He has walled me in, so I cannot escape. He has weighed me down with chains. Even when I call out or cry for help, he shuts out my prayer. That's the man, that's who's speaking. He says God has walled him in, chained him, and read that last line again, shuts out my prayer. This is a person accusing God of not listening. In Scripture, in the canon, God preserved the complaint, and then in the middle of it, verse 21, yet this I call to mind, and therefore I have hope. Yet. Nothing changed. The city is still rubble. The prayer is still, by his own account, unanswered. He does not report a rescue. He reports a decision. This I call to mind. He goes and gets something. He reaches for a fact he is not currently feeling, and the fact is this: because of the Lord's great love we are not consumed, for his compassions never fail. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. We are not consumed. That's the whole claim, and notice how modest it is. He doesn't say we're fine. He doesn't say it was worth it. He says, we are not consumed. We are still here. The fire took the city, and it did not take us. If you are lonely tonight, that may be all you can honestly say. I'm still here. And Lamentations says, that's not nothing. That's evidence. The only reason you are still here is that something has been holding you that you did not notice holding you. New every morning. The Hebrew for compassion is related to the word for womb. It's the visceral, gut-level tenderness of a mother. And it's new every morning. not renewed, new. Fresh mercy, manufactured overnight, delivered before you wake up, which means you cannot use tomorrow's up tonight. You cannot spend it in advance by worrying. And it also means whatever you burned through today, however badly you handled today, however much mercy you needed, just to get through the last 18 hours, the supply resets while you sleep. There is a delivery coming to your door in a few hours. It has never once failed to arrive. And the man who told us that was sitting in the ashes of everything he loved when he said it. Promise 63. The Lord is good to all. He has compassion on all he has made. Psalm 145:9. And the reach of it is what matters. The Lord is good to all. He has compassion on all he has made. All he has made, not all who deserve it, not all who asked, not all who have been faithful or consistent or grateful. The qualifying condition is being made by him, and you meet it. That's the entire eligibility requirement, and you satisfied it before you were conscious. Read a few verses down, verse 14. The Lord upholds all who fall and lifts up all who are bowed down, all who fall. The falling is the qualification again. He's not upholding those who stand. Those don't need it. The category he acts on is the collapsing. And bowed down, the Hebrew, is for something bent under weight, pressed down. The image of a person who has been carrying something long enough that their posture has changed. If loneliness has bent you, and it does physically, people who are lonely walk differently, sleep differently, their bodies keep a record. You are in the exact demographic verse 14 names, and then verse 18. The Lord is near to all who call on him, to all who call on him in truth. In truth. That's the only filter in the whole psalm. Not in eloquence. Not in faith of a certain measured quantity. In truth, meaning honestly, meaning say the actual thing, which is good news, because the actual thing tonight might be, I don't know if you're there, or I'm angry, or I have nothing left. Those are true. Truth is the only entry requirement, and despair told honestly clears the bar. Promise 64. God is not human, that he should lie. Numbers 23:19. God is not human, that he should lie, not a human being, that he should change his mind. Does he speak and then not act? Does he promise and not fulfill? This is the verse that holds up the other 99, because every promise in this video is only as good as the character of the one making it. A promise is a claim about the future made by someone in the present, and its entire value rests on whether that person will still be the same person when the future arrives. And that's precisely where every human promise you've ever received went wrong. Nobody set out to lie to you. People meant it. The person who said, "I'll always be here," meant it at the time, and then they changed. That's the mechanism. Human promises don't usually fail through deceit. They fail through drift. The person who made the promise slowly became a different person who wouldn't have made it. And Numbers 23:19 says that mechanism does not exist in God, not because he's more disciplined than you, because he doesn't drift. There's no later version of him who will feel differently. And look at who's speaking. This is Balaam, a foreign diviner, hired by a king to curse Israel, being paid to say the opposite of this. He opens his mouth to curse, and this comes out instead. The testimony to God's reliability comes from a hostile witness on the enemy payroll. Does he promise and not fulfill? It's a rhetorical question, which means the answer is embarrassing to state. No, he does not. So when you get to the end of these 100 promises, and the old voice says, "But will he actually?" Numbers 23:19 is the answer. The question isn't whether he'll keep them. The question is only what kind of being made them. Promise 65. Jesus Christ is the same yesterday and today and forever. Hebrews 13:8. And the placement in the letter is deliberate. Read verse 7, right before, Remember your leaders who spoke the word of God to you. Consider the outcome of their way of life and imitate their faith. The writer has just told them to remember their leaders, and the Greek construction implies these leaders are gone. Dead, most likely. Martyred, possibly. The people who taught them are not there anymore. Then, Jesus Christ is the same yesterday and today and forever. That's not a doctrinal aside dropped in at random. It's the answer to the previous sentence. Your teachers are gone. He isn't. And read verse 5 a few lines up. Keep your lives free from the love of money and be content with what you have, because God has said, never will I leave you, never will I forsake you. That's Deuteronomy 31:6 again, promise one. The writer of Hebrews reaches back across 1,000 years and picks up the exact sentence Moses said at the edge of the Jordan and hands it to a persecuted church in the 1st century. The promise is old and it's still in circulation. It has outlived Moses. It has outlived the leaders these people are mourning, and it will outlive you. Yesterday and today and forever. 3 time zones, 1 person, no variance. Everyone you know is a moving target. The friend you had at 20 is not available anymore. That person is gone, replaced by someone with the same name. Even the people who stayed have changed underneath you. Part of loneliness for anyone past a certain age is grieving people who are still alive. There is one relationship in your life immune to that. He is not becoming anything. The Christ who stopped for the blind man on the road, who cooked breakfast for the friend who denied him, who wept at a grave he was about to open. That is the current, live, present tense person, unchanged today. Same yesterday, same today, same when you get there. Promise 66. We do not have a high priest who is unable to empathize with our weaknesses. Hebrews 4:15. And the double negative is doing something. For we do not have a high priest who is unable to empathize with our weaknesses, but we have one who has been tempted in every way, just as we are, yet he did not sin. The writer could have said we have a high priest who understands. He doesn't. He goes the long way around. Not unable because he's answering an objection nobody said out loud. The objection is he can't possibly know what this is like. That's the thought. You've had it. God is God. He has never been tired, never been overlooked, never sat in a room where nobody said his name. What could he possibly know about a Tuesday? And Hebrews says that objection is false, and here's why. Tempted in every way, just as we are, every way, which includes this one. Jesus knew loneliness as a lived condition, not a doctrine. His hometown rejected him. His family thought he was out of his mind. Mark 3:21. His own relatives went to seize him because they thought he'd lost it. His closest friends fell asleep on the worst night of his life, while he was 3 stone throws away sweating blood. One of them sold him. One denied him with cursing. All of them ran, and on the cross he experienced the one form of loneliness you have never experienced and never will, the withdrawal of the Father. My God, why have you forsaken me? He said it, out loud, in public, quoting a psalm about a man who felt abandoned because it was the only vocabulary that fit. So when you pray tonight, you are not explaining your situation to someone who needs the background. The word behind empathize means to suffer alongside, to feel the same thing at the same time. You are talking to someone who has the injury. He is not sympathetic from a distance. He is scarred in the same places. Promise 67. Jesus wept, John 11:35. The shortest verse in the Bible, and I would argue the heaviest. Lazarus is dead. Jesus arrives 4 days late. Deliberately late. He waited. The text says so, and he's about to raise him. He knows this. In 60 seconds, he's going to call a dead man out of a tomb by name, and the man will walk out still wrapped in his grave clothes. Jesus knows the ending, and he cries anyway. Sit with that because it dismantles something. We assume that if you knew the outcome, the grief would be unnecessary, that the tears are a function of ignorance, that if you could just see the whole picture, you wouldn't need to cry. And every well-meaning person who has ever told you don't cry, it'll be okay, is operating on that assumption. Jesus knew it would be okay. In 1 minute, he wept, which means grief is not a failure of perspective. The tears were not a mistake he made before he remembered he was God. They were the correct response of a whole person to a broken world, and he had both. And look at the verb the text uses for him a few lines earlier. He was deeply moved in spirit and troubled. The Greek word is startling. It's used elsewhere for the snorting of a horse. It carries anger. Jesus is not gently sad at that tomb. He is furious. He is standing in front of death, and something in him is roaring. So when you cry alone tonight, he is not embarrassed by it. He's not waiting for you to be reasonable. He's not standing above your grief with a better perspective. He is in front of the tomb with you, angry, wet-faced, and about to do something about it. Promise. 68. A bruised reed he will not break. Isaiah 42:3. A bruised reed he will not break, and a smouldering wick he will not snuff out. 2 images, and you have to know what they were worth. A reed grew everywhere along the Jordan. It was worthless, the cheapest, most abundant thing in the landscape. And a bruised reed was worse than worthless. It was a reed you couldn't even use for the one thing reeds were good for. Every shepherd who ever tried to make a flute out of one and found it cracked did the obvious thing. Snapped it and threw it away and picked another. There were 1,000,000 more. And a smouldering wick. A lamp wick that has gone out and is just producing smoke. It's not giving light, it's giving stink. The obvious move is to pinch it and put a new one in. Both images are things whose usefulness has ended and whose disposal costs nothing. And Isaiah says, he won't break it, he won't snuff it. The bruised, cracked, useless thing gets handled instead of discarded. Now here's what stops me. This is a messianic passage. This is the prophecy about the servant, the one Matthew quotes directly about Jesus. Of all the ways to describe the coming king of the world, the prophet chose. He is the one who will not throw away the broken thing. That's the resume. That's what's on the first page. If you feel used up tonight, if you feel like you're producing smoke instead of light, like whatever you once offered people you can't offer anymore, like you have become the kind of thing a reasonable person would replace. You are specifically and by name the demographic the Messiah was prophesied to handle differently. He is not looking for a better reed. There are 1,000,000 better reeds. He is holding the cracked one. Promise 69. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened. Matthew 11:28-30, and you have to hear who's invited. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. All. The only entrance requirement in the sentence is exhaustion. This is the most open invitation in Scripture, and it is addressed to a qualification you already have. You don't need to be good. You don't need to have it together. You don't need to have prayed correctly or believed sufficiently. You need to be tired. You're tired. You're in. And then, take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Now, a yoke is a beam. It goes on the neck of 2 oxen so they pull together. That's the whole design. A yoke is a 2-animal instrument. There is no such thing as a single yoke. The word means the thing that joins. So when Jesus says, take my yoke, he is not handing you equipment. He is offering to get in the other side of it. And here's what any farmer knew. You paired a young ox with an older one. The young one didn't know the field. It pulled wrong, it drifted, it panicked, and the old ox just walked. The yoke meant the young one couldn't wander far and couldn't carry more than its share because the beam distributed the weight to the animal that could take it. My yoke is easy. The word means well-fitted, custom, not easy as in light, easy as in made for you, no chafing, no wrong angles. You are not being asked to carry less. You're being asked to stop pulling alone. And the reason he gives, for I am gentle and humble in heart, is the only time in all 4 Gospels that Jesus describes his own inner character. He said a lot about his mission, his Father, his identity. Once, exactly once, he tells us what he's like inside, and what he tells us is, I'm gentle. That's what's waiting when you come, not an evaluation. Gentleness. Promise. 70. He remembers that we are dust. Psalm 103:14. For he knows how we are formed. He remembers that we are dust. This is the promise for the person exhausted by their own failure. He knows how we are formed. The word is the potter's word. He knows because he shaped it. He has his fingerprints on the clay. Nobody has to file a report with God about your limitations. He built them. He remembers that we are dust. He remembers, which implies he factors it in. It's not a fact he has to be reminded of at your trial. It's already in the calculation. And this is the thing you don't do for yourself. You forget your dust constantly. You hold yourself to a standard appropriate for a machine. You expect to function identically on 4 hours of sleep and 8, in grief and in peace, in year 1 of loneliness and year 6. And when you can't, you file it under character failure. God doesn't. God looks at you at the end of a day you barely survived and thinks, dust. Of course. That's what I made. And read the verses around it, because this is where the psalm is going. As a father has compassion on his children, so the Lord has compassion on those who fear him. And as far as the east is from the west, so far has he removed our transgressions from us. East from west, notice, not north from south. North and south have poles. There's a fixed distance, and if you go far enough north, you start going south. East and west never meet. There's no pole. You can travel east forever and never once begin traveling west. He chose the axis with no limit. You are dust, and he knows, and he remembers, and the distance he has put between you and your worst day is on the only axis in geometry that doesn't close. Part 12. The Promises of Strength. Promise. 71. I can do all this through him who gives me strength. Philippians 4:13. And this is the most abused verse in the New Testament, so let's take it back. Athletes put it on their eye black. It gets printed under photos of people winning things. And the implied meaning is, with God, I can achieve anything. Read the verse before it. The one Paul wrote it as the conclusion to, I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. I can do all this through him who gives me strength. All this, the all things, is not a mountain. It's not a record. It's not a promotion. The all things is being hungry without falling apart. The all things is having nothing and not being destroyed by having nothing. Paul is in prison, writing about learning to be content, and the triumphant conclusion he reaches is, I can survive both of these states through Christ. That's the verse. And it is so much better than the eye black version, because the eye black version is useless to you tonight. You don't need a verse about winning. You need a verse about getting through a Tuesday in a season that is not turning. That's what this is. This is the verse for enduring things, written by a man in chains about the specific skill of being okay in circumstances that are not okay. Through him who gives me strength. The verb means to infuse power into, to pour strength in. It's continuous. Not a one-time deposit, an ongoing infusion, arriving at the rate it's needed. You can do this, not because you're strong, because there is a supply line, and it terminates in you, and it was written about by someone who tested it in a cell. Promise 72. The joy of the Lord is your strength. Nehemiah 8:10. and the scene is remarkable. The exiles have come back. The wall is rebuilt, and Ezra stands up on a wooden platform and reads the law out loud to the whole assembled nation, for hours, from daybreak until noon, and they weep, because they hear it, and they realize how far they've been from it. The whole nation is standing there sobbing, because the law read aloud is an indictment, and they know it. And Nehemiah says, "Do not grieve, for the joy of the Lord is your strength." Now look at the phrase, the joy of the Lord. It's ambiguous in the Hebrew, deliberately. It can mean the joy you have in Him, or it can mean His joy, the joy that belongs to Him, that He has. And I think it's the second one, and I think that's the whole point. Your joy is not your strength. Your joy is a variable, your joy is weather. Some nights you have none at all, and if your strength ran on your joy, you'd be dead already. But His joy is not a variable. His joy is not contingent on your week. And Nehemiah is saying that the thing he has, the gladness that is native to him, that is your structural support. You are held up by an emotion that is not yours and does not fluctuate with your circumstances. And then look at what Nehemiah tells them to do with it. In the same verse, "Go and enjoy choice food and sweet drinks, and send some to those who have nothing prepared. Eat something good, and send some to the people with nothing." That is the instruction on the day the nation collapsed in grief. Eat and feed somebody who has less, which is the most practical, spiritual advice in Scripture, and nobody ever preaches it. If you are lonely and grieving tonight, eat something good. And find the person with nothing prepared. Promise 73. The Lord is my strength and my shield, Psalm 28:7. The Lord is my strength and my shield. My heart trusts in Him and He helps me. My heart leaps for joy, and with my song I praise Him. Two metaphors, and they're not the same. Two metaphors, and they're not the same. Strength is what's in you. A shield is what's between you and the thing. David asks for both, and he's precise about it, because they solve different problems. Strength solves the problem of, I can't keep going. A shield solves the problem of, I can't take another hit. Those are different failures, and everyone knows the difference. And the shield he's describing, the Hebrew word, is the small round one, strapped to the arm. Not the body-length tower shield, the mobile one. The one you carry into the fight that moves where you move. God is not a wall you stand behind. He's a shield you carry with you, which means the protection travels into the place you're going. And notice the sequence in the verse. My heart trusts in Him and He helps me. My heart leaps for joy. Trust, then help, then joy. In that order. The joy is third. The joy is downstream of the help, which is downstream of the trust. Which means you do not have to feel joyful in order to begin. Trust starts the sequence, and trust is not a feeling, it's a decision to lean your weight on something. If you have no joy tonight, you're not disqualified. You're at step 1, lean. Promise 74, God is our refuge and strength, an ever-present help in trouble. Psalm 46:1. And it's the middle phrase that does the work. God is our refuge and strength, an ever-present help in trouble. The Hebrew behind ever-present help is more specific than English can carry. It means found, abundantly available, proven to be there. Some render it a help very much found in trouble. The claim is empirical. It's not that He's theoretically available. It's that people who went looking in trouble found Him there, reliably enough that you can state it as a general fact. And notice where He's found, in trouble. That's the location. The psalm doesn't say He's an ever-present help who will prevent trouble. He's a help located inside it, which means, and this is uncomfortable, some things about God are only findable in the trouble. There is a location-locked experience. There are things you will not learn on the good days, because the good days do not contain them. Every single person you have ever met who had something real, something that made you want what they had, ask them where they got it. It was never on the mountain. It was always in the pit, And they will tell you so, and they will also tell you they'd never volunteer to go back. Refuge. The word is a place you run to, not a state of mind, a location. You are not being asked to feel refuged. You're being asked to run somewhere. Promise 75. In quietness and trust is your strength. Isaiah 30:15. And the last line of the verse is one of the saddest sentences in the Bible. This is what the sovereign Lord, the Holy One of Israel, says. In repentance and rest is your salvation. In quietness and trust is your strength. But you would have none of it. But you would have none of it. God offers the thing and the people decline. And what were they doing instead? Read the chapter. They were running to Egypt. They were making alliances. They were arranging their own rescue frantically with horses and chariots and diplomacy because Assyria was coming and they had to do something. And God's offer was rest, quietness, trust. And they said no, not because they were rebellious in some abstract theological way. They said no because rest felt like doing nothing while the army approached, and they could not bear it. I want you to hear how contemporary that is. When you are lonely, you do not sit still. You arrange things. You go back to the person who hurt you, because at least it's a person. You take the job, move the city, download the app, refresh the phone, say yes to the thing you don't want. You make alliances with Egypt because Egypt is at least something, and quietness feels like surrender. And God says, quietness is your strength, not the preparation for strength, the thing itself. In returning and rest, you shall be saved. Some translations, returning, coming back. Stopping the outbound motion, and then the tenderness of verse 18, which follows immediately after they refuse. Yet the Lord longs to be gracious to you, therefore he will rise up to show you compassion. Yet they said no, and the very next word out of God's mouth is a longing to be gracious anyway. The offer is still open. It was open after they refused it. It's open now. Part 13, the promises of purpose, promise 76. In all things God works for the good of those who love him, Romans 8:28. And we have to be careful, because this verse gets used as a weapon. And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. People say this at funerals. People say it to the recently divorced, the recently diagnosed, the recently abandoned, and it lands as, this bad thing is secretly good. That is not what it says. Read it precisely. It does not say all things are good. It says God works in all things for good. There are three separate elements: the things, God's work, and the good. And the verse does not collapse them. Your loneliness is not good. It is not good. God does not say it is. God says he is working in it, and works. The Greek is synergio. It's where we get synergy. It means to work together with. The image is combination of things being brought into cooperation that would never cooperate on their own. Think of what that implies. Ingredients. Nobody eats raw flour. Nobody drinks raw egg. Nobody takes a spoonful of baking soda. Individually, half the components of anything good are inedible or foul. The synergy is what makes them into something, and no amount of staring at the flour will show you the bread. And notice Romans 8:28 sits directly after 8:26. The wordless groans. Paul puts them next to each other on purpose. The order is, you don't know what to pray. The Spirit groans for you, and God is working all of it together. The promise about good coming is addressed to people who are too wrecked to form sentences. That's the audience, not the people who understand, the people groaning, so I will not tell you this is good. I'll tell you what Paul actually claimed, which is stranger and better. It is being worked. Something is being made. And you are not able to see the loaf from inside the flour. Promise 77. You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good. Genesis 50:20. And this is Romans 8:28 with a face and a name on it. Joseph, standing in front of the brothers who threw him in a pit and sold him to slavers and told their father he was dead. It's been decades. Their father has just died, and now they're terrified. They think the only thing keeping Joseph from revenge was Jacob, and Jacob is gone. And they come and throw themselves down and offer to be his slaves. And Joseph weeps and says, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives." Look at what he does not do. He does not say it wasn't that bad. He does not say you meant well. He does not say I've decided to see it positively. He names the crime accurately. You intended to harm me. That was your intent. It was evil. I'm not revising the record. And then, in the same sentence, without contradiction, God intended it for good. Two intentions running through one event, both real, neither cancels the other. That's the whole doctrine, right there, from a man who lived it for 22 years without knowing the ending. Because remember, Joseph did not have this speech in the pit. He did not have it in Potiphar's house or the prison. He got it at the end, looking backward, and for 2 decades all he had was the pit with no interpretation attached. Which means, if you are in the middle of it, you are not supposed to be able to say Genesis 50:20 yet. Joseph couldn't. He said it in retrospect, and he had to live the whole thing forward in the dark first, the same way you're doing. You may not get the sentence until later. It's still true now. Promise 78. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Matthew 5:4. And you have to see what Jesus is doing with the whole list. The Beatitudes are not instructions. Nobody reads, "Blessed are the poor in spirit," as a command to go be poor in spirit. They're announcements. Jesus is standing in front of a crowd and naming who's blessed. And the names he calls are the exact ones nobody would have called. The poor, the mourning, the meek, the hungry, the persecuted. He's not telling them to become these things. He's telling them that these things are not what they thought they were. Blessed are those who mourn. Now, mourning was not a private state in that world. It was public, and it was disqualifying. A mourner was ritually set apart, wearing sackcloth, ashes on the head, torn clothes, outside the ordinary flow of life. They were the visibly unlucky, the people you avoided at a wedding. And Jesus says, those are the blessed ones, for they will be comforted. Passive voice. Look at it. Not they will find comfort, not they will comfort themselves. They will be comforted by someone else, someone unnamed in the sentence, someone doing the comforting to them. They are not the agent. They are the recipient. And the Greek word for comfort is parakaleo, to be called alongside. It's the same root as paraclete, the name Jesus gives the Holy Spirit in John 14. The comfort is not a feeling that gets delivered. It's a person who comes and stands next to you. So if you are mourning tonight and loneliness is mourning, you are grieving something, a person, a version of your life, a future you thought you'd have. Jesus has already, publicly, in front of a crowd, called you blessed. You didn't feel it, he said it anyway. He wasn't describing your Tuesday, he was announcing your category. Promise 79. The sufferings of this present time are not worth comparing, Romans 8:18, and Paul chooses his words like an accountant. I consider that our present sufferings are not worth comparing with the glory that will be revealed in us. I consider, the Greek is a calculating word. It means to reckon, to compute, to run the numbers. Paul is not being poetic, he's doing arithmetic and reporting the result, and the result is not worth comparing. The comparison isn't close enough to be worth performing. It's not that glory wins by a lot. It's that the operation doesn't produce a meaningful ratio. Now, this could be obscene coming from anyone else. If a comfortable man said this to you tonight, you'd be right to walk out. But go back to Paul's ledger. 5 times 39 lashes, 3 beatings with rods, stoned and dragged out of a city and left for dead, 3 shipwrecks, a night and a day adrift in open sea, constant danger, hunger, thirst, cold, exposure, years in prison, and eventually a sword. That's the man doing the math. He has entered the numbers. He knows the size of the suffering column because he filled it in himself, and his finding is, it doesn't compare. He also says in 2 Corinthians that these are light and momentary troubles. That's a man who was beaten with rods, calling it light, which tells you nothing about the rods and everything about what he saw on the other side of the ledger. Your loneliness is not light, not tonight, not from where you're sitting. Paul isn't asking you to feel that it's light. He's telling you what the accounting looks like when both columns are finally visible, from someone who's seen further into the second column than most people ever have. Promise 80. Blessed is the one who perseveres under trial. James 1:12, and read the beginning of the letter with it. Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work, so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. Let perseverance finish its work. That's the line. Because it implies perseverance has a job, and the job takes time, and it can be interrupted. And James says, don't interrupt it. Now, consider it pure joy is a hard sentence, and I refuse to soften it into something cheap. He does not say, feel joy. He says, consider, the same reckoning word Paul used. It's an act of the mind about a fact, not a demand for an emotion. James is not telling a grieving person to be happy. He's telling them what the trial is for and asking them to file it accordingly. And not lacking anything, that's the destination. The end of the process is a person who lacks nothing. Same phrase as Psalm 23. Same promise. Then verse 12. Blessed is the one who perseveres under trial, because, having stood the test, that person will receive the crown of life that the Lord has promised to those who love him. Having stood the test. Standing is the whole requirement. Not winning, not thriving, not doing it gracefully or with a good attitude or without complaining. Standing. You are standing. You are still here, at whatever hour this is, listening to a stranger read you promises, and you have not walked away from God even though you had every reason and every opportunity. That's standing. That's the entire test, and you're currently passing it, and you didn't even know that's what you were doing. Part 14. The Promises of Home. Promise 81. In my Father's house are many rooms. John 14:2. Same night as the orphan promise. Same room. My Father's house has many rooms. If that were not so, would I have told you that I am going there to prepare a place for you? And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come back and take you to be with me, that you also may be where I am. A place for you. Not a place for you. Specific, assigned. Prepared with a particular occupant in mind, the way you'd make up a room for someone you know. You'd think about what side they sleep on, what they read, whether they get cold. And prepare is a word about advance work, something being made ready before the person arrives, which means right now, tonight, while you sit in a room feeling like you belong nowhere, there is a room being prepared with your name on the door by someone who knows you better than anyone has ever known you. And here's the phrase that undoes the whole thing, that you also may be where I am. That's the purpose, not the room. The room is not the point. Read it again. The point is proximity. He's not preparing a nice place for you to enjoy. He's preparing a place near him, and he states that as the reason for the whole operation. He's not making you comfortable. He's making the distance end, and I will come back and take you, personally. He doesn't send for you, he doesn't give directions. He comes back and gets you, the way you'd go get someone from an airport at 2 a.m. because you couldn't stand the idea of them finding their own way. If you have never had a home, if the word doesn't map onto anything in your memory, if there is no address where someone would be glad to hear the door, hear this. Home is not behind you. It's not a thing you lost and have to find again. It's under construction, and the builder is coming to collect you himself. Promise 82. Our citizenship is in heaven. Philippians 3:20. And you have to know who he wrote it to. Philippi was a Roman colony. That's a specific legal thing. It meant the residents held Roman citizenship, even though Rome was 800 miles away. They wore Roman dress. They used Roman law. They spoke Latin in a Greek province. They were permanently a piece of somewhere else, planted in a place that wasn't home. Every single person reading that letter knew exactly what it felt like to belong to a country they'd never lived in. And Paul says, our citizenship is in heaven, and we eagerly await a Savior from there, the Lord Jesus Christ. The word for citizenship is politiuma, your commonwealth, the place whose laws you're under, whose passport you hold, whose government is responsible for you. Here's what that reframes. If you feel like you don't fit, if you have felt your whole life slightly foreign in every room, like there's a way of being at ease that other people learned and you missed, Philippians 3:20 says, that is not a personality flaw, that's a nationality. You're not bad at being here. You're from somewhere else. And read the next line. Who, by the power that enables him to bring everything under his control, will transform our lowly bodies so that they will be like his glorious body. The transformation is a homecoming thing. The body you have, the tired one, the one that doesn't sleep, the one that's aged in ways you didn't consent to, gets brought into line with the country you're actually from. Exiles in Philippi, exiles in your city, same passport, same king, same date of return, Promise 83. Here we have no lasting city, but we are looking for the city that is to come, Hebrews 13:14, and the honesty of it is the gift. For here we do not have an enduring city, but we are looking for the city that is to come. He just says it. There's no permanent thing here, don't look for one. The search itself is the error, and read Hebrews 11 with it, the great chapter about faith and what it says about the people in the list. All these people were still living by faith when they died. They did not receive the things promised. They only saw them and welcomed them from a distance, admitting that they were foreigners and strangers on earth. They did not receive the things promised. That's in the Bible. In the faith chapter. The heroes of faith are commended specifically for dying without getting the thing. They only saw them and welcomed them from a distance. The word for welcomed is what you do when you greet someone. You see them coming down the road and you raise your hand. They saw the promise from far away and waved at it. And then verse 16, they were longing for a better country, a heavenly one. Therefore God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he has prepared a city for them. Therefore God is not ashamed. The longing is what he's not ashamed of. The dissatisfaction, the not fitting, the ache that nothing here answers, that's what God points to and says those are mine. So the restlessness you feel, the sense that you keep arriving, and it's still not it, that you got the thing you wanted and the hole was still there, is not evidence that you're ungrateful. It's evidence that you've correctly identified the situation. There's no lasting city here. You've noticed. That's not cynicism. That's the beginning of sight. Promise 84. He has prepared a city for them, staying in Hebrews 11:16, because the last clause deserves its own promise. God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he has prepared a city for them. A city, not a garden, not a private paradise, not a personal cloud with your name on it. A city. That word should stop every lonely person on earth, because Eden was a garden, and the Bible does not end where it started. It ends in a city. Revelation 21, the New Jerusalem coming down. The whole arc of Scripture runs from a garden with 2 people in it to a city with an uncountable multitude. A city is, by definition, other people. You cannot have a city of one. The word means density, neighbors, streets, noise, encounter. A city is the architectural form of not being alone. God's final answer to human loneliness is not a peaceful solitude. It's an address in a crowded place where you know everyone and everyone knows you and nobody leaves. And he has prepared, perfect tense, already done. The construction is complete. It's not being designed. It exists, and it's waiting for occupancy. Read Revelation 21 and count the gates. 12. 3 on each side, north, south, east, west. Every direction has a way in. There is no back of the city. There is no wrong side of town. Whatever direction you're coming from, there's a gate facing you, and the text says they're never shut. You have spent your life feeling like you were outside something. There's a city. It's finished. It has a gate on your side, and the gate does not close. Promise 85. You will be with me in paradise. Luke 23:43. And I want you to see who gets this promise. A criminal, dying, executed for actual crimes he actually committed. He says so himself. We are punished justly, for we are getting what our deeds deserve. He has hours left, maybe less. There is no possible restitution, no reformed life, no years of faithful service ahead. His entire remaining future is measured in breaths, and every one of them hurts. And he says, Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. That's the whole prayer. That's the entire content of his theology. 6 words. Remember me. He doesn't ask for rescue. He doesn't ask to be forgiven, technically. He asks not to be forgotten by a man who is dying next to him. And Jesus says, truly I tell you, today you will be with me in paradise. Today, not eventually, not after a process. Today, same day, before sundown. And look at the structure of the answer, because Jesus gives him more than he asked for on every axis. He asked to be remembered. Jesus says, you will be with me. He asked about a future kingdom. Jesus says today. He asked for a thought. He got a place, a person, and a date. That is the last conversation Jesus has with anyone before he dies. That's the final piece of pastoral work in his earthly life. Not with a disciple, not with his mother, with a convicted criminal hanging 3 feet away who managed 6 words. And this is the one that ends every argument about whether you've done enough. There is a man in paradise tonight whose entire spiritual resume consists of 1 sentence, spoken while dying, in pain, with no ability to prove anything, ever. Remember me. If that got in, you're in. Part 15. The promises of the end of loneliness. Promise. 86. God has said, I will live with them and walk among them. 2 Corinthians 6:16, quoting Leviticus. I will live with them and walk among them, and I will be their God, and they will be my people. Walk among them. The verb is casual. It's not appear to them, not visit, not manifest. Walk. The way you walk through your own house. And the phrase reaches all the way back to Genesis 3, to the sound of the Lord God walking in the garden in the cool of the day. The detail nobody notices, that God walked there, habitually, in the evening. And the man and woman knew the sound of it well enough to recognize it and hide. They knew what God's footsteps sounded like. That's what was lost. Not information about God. The sound of him coming in the evening as a normal thing. And the promise, running through Leviticus and the prophets and into Paul, is that it's coming back, not a visitation, a walking among. The ordinary presence of someone at home in the same space you're in, and I will be their God, and they will be my people. That formula appears again and again in Scripture, from Genesis to Revelation. It's the covenant sentence. It's what God says when He's defining the relationship, and He never revises it. It's the same clause in the last book of the Bible as the first, which is a strange thing about the story when you notice it. God has one thing He keeps saying He wants. Not worship exactly, not obedience primarily. He wants to live with people. The loneliest thing about the human condition might be that we assume we're the only lonely party. Read the whole Bible as one document, and there's a case to be made that it's the story of someone who will not stop trying to move back in. Promise 87. The dwelling place of God is with man. Revelation 21:3, and this is the sentence the entire Bible is driving toward. Look, God's dwelling place is now among the people, and He will dwell with them. They will be His people, and God Himself will be with them and be their God. Read the pile-up. Dwelling place among them. He will dwell with them. They will be His people. God Himself will be with them and be their God. 5 ways of saying the same thing in one verse. John is not being economical. He's stuttering with joy. He has seen the thing and he can't stop restating it. And the word dwelling place is skene, tent, tabernacle. The same word used in John 1:14, where the Word became flesh and made His dwelling among us, literally pitched His tent among us. So the ark is God tents among Israel in the wilderness. God tents in a human body in Nazareth. God tents among humanity forever. Same word, 3 times, getting closer each time. And note the direction of travel in Revelation 21. The city comes down. Verse 2, coming down out of heaven from God. The movement in the last chapter of the Bible is not us going up. It's Him coming down. Heaven relocates. Everything you have ever been taught about the destination might have the vector backwards. God Himself will be with them. Himself. Not through a mediator, not through a veil, a cloud, a priesthood, a temple curtain, a prophet, a book, or a video. Himself. Every single thing that has ever stood between you and God, including your own inability to feel Him, is, in that verse, gone. Not overcome. Gone. There's nothing in the sentence between the 2 nouns, God with them. Promise 88. He will wipe every tear from their eyes. Revelation 21:4. And I said earlier that this was the last image the Bible chooses. I want to sit in it properly now. He will wipe every tear from their eyes. There will be no more death or mourning or crying or pain, for the old order of things has passed away. Of every possible closing image, the throne, the sea of glass, the streets of gold, the light with no sun, the one God chooses for the end of the story is a hand reaching toward a face. You cannot wipe a tear from across a room. It requires proximity. It requires that you be close enough to touch someone and that they let you. It is the gesture you make to a child or to someone you love who is coming apart, and it is not a gesture you make to a stranger. That's the last thing. That's how it ends. And every tear, not the noble ones, not the ones with good reasons, everyone, the ones you cried over something stupid, the ones nobody knew about, the ones in the car in the parking lot. The ones you're crying now, at whatever hour it is, listening to this because there was nowhere else to put it. And here's the connection I need you to make, because it's been waiting since Promise 14. David asked God to put his tears in a bottle. Don't let them hit the ground, keep them. Psalm 56 opens the bottle. Revelation 21 closes it. And it turns out the reason they were collected is that every one of them is going to be dealt with personally by hand, one at a time, by God Himself. Every tear you have cried alone in the dark has an appointment. It is on a list. There is a hand coming for it. Promise 89. Death has been swallowed up in victory. 1 Corinthians 15:54-55, and Paul is mocking, "Death has been swallowed up in victory. Where, O death, is your victory? Where, O death, is your sting?" He's taunting it. He's addressing death directly as a defeated party in the second person and asking where its trophies went. That's not a hymn. That's trash talk at a funeral. And the word swallowed, katapino, means gulped down, drunk up, consumed entirely, not defeated in a negotiated settlement. Swallowed. The thing that eats everything got eaten. Now here's why this matters for loneliness specifically. Death is the engine of every separation you have ever suffered. It's the one that took the people you can't get back. And even where death hasn't come yet, its shadow is what makes every relationship provisional. You love people knowing the arrangement is temporary, and some part of you never fully commits because of it. Every goodbye you have ever said is a rehearsal for the real one. That's what makes them hurt. And Paul says, the mechanism is destroyed. The engine that produces separation has been swallowed, which means at the end of this, there are no more goodbyes, not fewer, none. The word will have no referent. There will be no occasion for it. Everyone you have lost, if they're his, is not lost. They're early. That's the whole claim. They went ahead. The separation is a matter of scheduling. Where, O death, is your sting? A bee that has stung has lost its stinger. It can still frighten you. It cannot hurt you again. Death can still frighten you. Paul's point is that it left the stinger in Christ. Promise 90. We will always be with the Lord. 1 Thessalonians 4:17. And the last 5 words are the promise. Paul is writing to a church in grief. People have died. And the Thessalonians are panicking because they thought Jesus would come back before anyone died, and now he hasn't, and their people are in the ground. And Paul writes them the passage about the return, the trumpet, the voice, the dead in Christ rising. And he lands it here. And so we will be with the Lord forever, and so we will always be with the Lord. Not, and so we will be in heaven, not, and so we will have peace. The payoff of the entire eschatology, the thing Paul reaches for as the final word, is with. That preposition is the whole Bible. Emmanuel, God with us. I am with you always. I will be with you when you pass through the waters. He is with them. We will be with the Lord. Every promise in this video has been a variation on one preposition, and always. The Greek is pantot, at all times, continuously, with no interruption whatsoever. Not often, not as much as possible, without gaps. Do you understand what that does to loneliness? Loneliness is not the absence of people. It's the presence of gaps. It's the space between contacts. It's the fact that even the best relationship you have has intervals. The person leaves, hangs up, sleeps, has their own life, and you're alone again in the gap. Every human intimacy you have ever had has been intermittent. That's not anyone's fault. It's the architecture. Always with the Lord means the architecture changes. No intervals, no gaps. Nothing between one moment of presence and the next. And then Paul's instruction, verse 18, therefore encourage one another with these words. These words. He tells them to say it to each other. Out loud. Use the sentences. That's what I've been doing for the last 2 hours. These are the words. Part 16. The last 10. Promise. 91. I am the good shepherd. I know my sheep and my sheep know me. John 10:14. And Jesus makes the comparison himself. I am the good shepherd. I know my sheep and my sheep know me, just as the Father knows me and I know the Father, and I lay down my life for the sheep. Look at the just as. He is calibrating the intimacy between himself and you against the intimacy between himself and the Father. That's the standard he picks. Not I know you pretty well. The Trinity is the measuring stick, and earlier in the chapter, verse 3, he calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. Verse 4. His sheep follow him because they know his voice. Sheep were kept overnight in a communal fold. Several flocks, one enclosure, one gate. And in the morning the shepherds came, and each one called, and their sheep came out of the mixed crowd. Not because they were sorted, but because they knew the voice. They came out of a crowd because someone was calling them specifically. And this is what I want to say to you at 91, because you've been listening a long time. You have been in a crowd your whole life and not heard your name in it. That's what loneliness is in a populated world. The fold is full. Nobody's calling, someone is calling. You may not have recognized the voice because it doesn't sound like what you expected, and it's been mixed in with a lot of noise. But the sheep know the voice eventually. That's the promise. Not that you'll be sorted, that you'll hear your name and walk out of the crowd toward it. Promise. 92. He goes ahead of them. John 10:4. Same chapter, one detail I skipped on purpose. When he has brought out all his own, he goes on ahead of them, and his sheep follow him because they know his voice. He goes on ahead of them. Not behind, driving. Ahead, leading. That's the difference between Eastern and Western shepherding, and it's not a small thing. In the West, we drive cattle. We get behind them and push. Middle Eastern shepherding was the reverse. The shepherd walked in front and the flock followed, and the whole relationship ran on the animal's willingness to go where the voice went, which means every single place your life is going, he is already there, and he got there before you. There is no square foot of your future that he is going to encounter for the first time when you do. He's not going to arrive at next year alongside you and be surprised. He's been there. He walked it. He's calling from further up the road. And here's what that does to the fear. The reason the unknown is terrifying is that it's unknown to somebody. And it isn't. It's only unknown to you. You are following a voice that is coming from a place you haven't reached yet, from someone who has already stood where you're afraid to stand. He's ahead of you. That's not a metaphor about time. It's a claim about the road. Promise 93. The Lord stood at my side and gave me strength. 2 Timothy 4:17. And this is Paul's last letter. He knows it. He says so. The time for my departure is near. Read verse 16 first, because you need the setup. At my first defense, no one came to my support, but everyone deserted me. May it not be held against them. No one came. Paul is on trial for his life in Rome, and there is a moment in a courtroom where the defendant's supporters stand up. And nobody stood up. Not one. After 30 years of planting churches across the empire, of the letters, of the beatings, of everything, he stood in that room alone. That is a betrayal so complete it should have ended him. And his response, may it not be held against them. He forgives them in the same breath he reports it. He doesn't even let the sentence finish before extending mercy. And then verse 17. But the Lord stood at my side and gave me strength. Stood at my side. That's courtroom language. That's the word for what a supporter does. The position that was empty, the place where his friends should have been standing, was occupied, not metaphorically. Paul is describing a location. There was a spot beside him in that room, and everyone who should have filled it didn't, and someone did. If you have been let down by everyone, if there was a moment in your life where you looked around for the people who should have been there and the space was empty, Paul is telling you, in his last written words from the last months of his life, that the space did not stay empty. Somebody stood there. He was the only one who noticed. He was also the only one who mattered. Promise 94. He is able to keep you from stumbling. Jude 24. The doxology at the end of the shortest, angriest book in the New Testament, to him who is able to keep you from stumbling and to present you before his glorious presence without fault and with great joy. 3 things in one sentence, and each is bigger than the last. Able to keep you from stumbling. The word means to guard, to watch over. It's a security word. He's not hoping you make it. He's stationed to present you before his glorious presence without fault. Present. That's a formal word. It's what you do at a court, at a wedding, at a coronation. Someone walks you in and announces you. And without fault, the word is used for sacrificial animals with no defect, not forgiven, not cleaned up. Without fault, as in there was never anything wrong with it. And then the last one, which is the one I need you to hear. With great joy. Whose joy? Read it. The sentence is about what he does. He keeps. He presents. And the presenting is done with great joy. The word means exultation, exuberance, the joy of someone who is absolutely delighted with what's happening. He's going to be happy about it. That's the picture. At the end, you are walked into the presence of God by someone who is thrilled to be doing it, not relieved, not grimly satisfied that the paperwork went through. Delighted. Go back to Zephaniah. Promise. 4. God spinning and singing over his people at volume. Same God. Same joy. Jude just tells you when the singing happens. Promise 95. The eternal God is your refuge, and underneath are the everlasting arms. Deuteronomy 33:27. Moses' last recorded words to the tribes before he goes up the mountain to die. The eternal God is your refuge, and underneath are the everlasting arms. Underneath. Not around, not above. Underneath. The direction matters more than anything else in the verse, because underneath is where you go when you fall. Underneath is the direction of collapse. Every fear you have about the bottom, about what happens if you really let go, if you stop performing, if you finally break the way you've been afraid you'd break, the answer this verse gives is not, you won't fall. It's there's a floor, and it's alive, and it's holding you, and everlasting arms. The Hebrew word for everlasting is the same root as the word for eternal in the first clause. Moses uses it twice in one sentence. The God who is eternal has arms that are eternal, which means there is no scenario in which they get tired, no hour at which they clock out, no fall long enough to outlast them. And notice, this is Moses. Again, same man as Promise 1, at the same moment, at the very end. Promise 1 was, he will never leave you nor forsake you. Promise 95 is underneath are the everlasting arms. The same man, in the same speech, at the edge of the same river, on the last day of his life. He'd spent 40 years watching people fall. He'd fallen himself. That's why he was standing on that side of the Jordan and not the other one. He knew exactly what he was talking about, and with his last breath of public speech, what he wanted them to know was the direction. Underneath. You have been terrified of the bottom your whole life. There isn't one. There are arms. Promise 96. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life. Psalm 23:6. The last verse of the psalm, and the verb is not what you think. Surely your goodness and love will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Follow, the Hebrew is radaf, and it does not mean follow. It's a hunting word. It means to pursue, to chase, to run after with intent. It's the word used for an army in pursuit of a fleeing enemy. It's what Pharaoh's chariots did to Israel at the sea. David chose a predator verb. He's saying, goodness and mercy are chasing me. They're hunting me down, not trailing along behind hoping to be noticed, pursuing, closing distance, running me to ground. And all the days of my life, the same phrase Jesus used in Matthew 28. All the days, every one, including the ones you were sure God had taken off. Here's the thing about being pursued. You don't have to find it. That's the point of the verb. A pursued man doesn't locate his pursuer. The pursuer locates him. All the energy in the transaction belongs to the one doing the chasing. You have spent this whole video, and maybe this whole year, worried that you can't find God. Psalm 23 ends by saying that's the wrong anxiety entirely. You're not the hunter, you're the quarry. And the things hunting you are goodness and mercy, and they have never lost a trail, and they are closing. You are being chased by the two best things in the universe, and you thought you were alone in an empty field. Promise 97. I have loved you with an everlasting love. Jeremiah 31:3. The Lord appeared to us in the past, saying, I have loved you with an everlasting love. I have drawn you with unfailing kindness. Everlasting love. The Hebrew olam. It runs both directions. Not just love without end, love without beginning. Sit with that, because it's the harder half. A love with no beginning was never started, which means it was never a response. There was no moment when God saw something in you and thought yes. There was no evaluation. It never began, which means it never had a cause, which means there is nothing you could remove that would take the cause away. Every love that started can stop. Every love that was earned can be unearned. If someone came to love you because of something, then that something is now load-bearing, and you know it, and that's why you're tired. His love has no because in it. And I have drawn you with unfailing kindness. Drawn. The word is used for pulling something toward you, hauling on a rope, drawing water from a well. You have been being pulled this whole time. The reason you're still here, still listening, still praying occasionally into a ceiling you're not sure has anything above it. That's not your religious persistence. That's a rope, and something on the other end of it, and a steady pull that has never once slackened. Promise 1. The rope does not go slack. 96 promises later, Jeremiah tells you which direction it's being pulled. Promise 98. The Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost. Luke 19:10. And you need to know who he says it to. Zacchaeus, a tax collector, meaning a collaborator, a man who worked for the occupying empire and got rich extracting money from his own people. He was hated with a specificity most of us never experience, not disliked. Hated by name by everyone in town for good reason. And he's short, so he climbs a tree because he wants to see Jesus, and the crowd won't let him through. Picture that. A wealthy grown man in a tree because the crowd would rather block him than let him past. And Jesus stops under the tree, looks up and says, Zacchaeus, come down immediately. I must stay at your house today. The name again. He knows the name and must. I must stay at your house today. Necessity. As if there were an appointment. And the crowd mutters, and of course they do, he has gone to be the guest of a sinner. And Jesus says, for the Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost. Came to seek. That's the job description. Not came to receive. Not came to be available to. Seek. The word means to search for something that's missing, the way you search a house for keys, the way the shepherds searched the wilderness for one animal out of 100. We opened with that shepherd. 98 promises ago, I told you about a man who leaves 99 on the hillside and goes into the dark after one. Luke 19:10 is Jesus saying, that's me, that's what I came to do. That parable was an autobiography. He didn't come to be found, he came to seek. The initiative is not on your side of this, and it never was. You've been trying to find your way back. He's been in the wilderness the whole time looking for you, and he does not get tired, and he does not go home when the weather turns. Promise 99. Nothing will be impossible with God. Luke 1:37, and who it's said to matters more than the words. Mary, a teenage girl in a village of maybe a few hundred people, in an occupied province, at the far edge of an empire that had never heard of her and never would. No power, no status, no platform. The kind of person history is not written about. And an angel tells her she'll bear the Son of God, and she says the obvious thing, how? And the answer ends with, for no word from God will ever fail. Some translations, nothing will be impossible with God. The Greek is closer to no word from God will be powerless. No statement he makes will lack the force to accomplish itself. which means every promise in this video, all 98 before this one, is not a hope. It's not a sentiment. It's a word from God, and no word from God will ever fail, and therefore each one carries its own power to happen. They're not descriptions of what God would like to do. They're the mechanism. And Mary's answer, I am the Lord's servant. May your word to me be fulfilled. May your word to me be fulfilled. That's all she does. She doesn't help. She doesn't arrange anything. She agrees to be the place where the word happens. And the entire history of the world turns on a teenage girl in a nowhere town saying okay to something she didn't understand. If you are nobody tonight, if you're in a small town nobody's heard of, in a life nobody's watching, at an hour nobody knows about, that is precisely the address to which God has historically sent his most important messages. Nothing will be impossible with God, including this, including what you've stopped asking for. Part 17, the 100th promise, 100. Behold, I am making all things new. Revelation 21:5, the last one. And we end here because this is where the Bible itself ends. 66 books, thousands of years, every kind of human being who has ever lived, kings and slaves, prophets and fishermen, a runaway pregnant girl in a desert, a man drooling in a doorway to survive, a prisoner in a courtyard, a criminal on a cross with 6 words left. Every one of them wrote or lived some fragment of what we have walked through tonight, and the whole library closes on this. He who was seated on the throne said, I am making all things new. Then he said, write this down, for these words are trustworthy and true. Write this down. That's the instruction attached to the last promise. Of everything in Revelation, the visions, the beasts, the seals, the horsemen, this is the sentence God stops and asks to have recorded. This one. Get this one down. Don't lose this one. And then, I am making all things new. Not all new things. That's the distinction, and it's everything. He doesn't say he's making a new set of things and discarding this one. He says he is making these things, the actual existing ruined things, new, which means nothing gets thrown out. Not the years the locusts ate. Not the decade you can't account for. Not the friendship that ended badly and never got fixed. Not the version of you that has been lonely for so long you've forgotten what you were like before. Not you. He is not replacing you with someone who never went through this. He is making you new. The same one. The one with the history. The one with the scar tissue. The one who sat through 100 promises at 2 in the morning because you needed to hear that somebody sees you. That one. Made new. And notice the tense. I am making. Present. Continuous. In progress. Not I will make. He's already started. This is not an announcement of future work. It's a status report on work that is underway. The making new is happening tonight. It's happening in the room you're in. You are, at this exact moment, mid-renovation. And I know it doesn't look like it, because renovations never do from the inside. From the inside, a renovation looks exactly like destruction. Same dust. Same noise. Same walls coming down. The only difference between a demolition and a restoration is the intention of the one holding the hammer. The end. So, that's 100. I told you at the start that by the time we got here you would not be able to honestly say that God has been silent about your loneliness. You may still say he's been slow. You may still say you don't understand the timing, and if you do, you're in the company of David and Job and Jeremiah and Habakkuk and every person in this book who ever asked how long. That's not a failure of faith. That question is in the Bible. God preserved it. He wrote down the complaints of people who couldn't find him and put them in the same book as the promises. But you cannot say he never spoke. He spoke 100 times. He spoke through a shepherd boy in a cave, and a prophet in a courtyard, and a slave girl by a spring in the desert, and a man in the ashes of a burned city who managed to say yet. He spoke through a fisherman who denied him and got breakfast anyway. He spoke through a man in chains doing arithmetic on his own suffering and finding that it didn't compare. And every one of those people felt what you're feeling. That's the thing I most want you to take out of this. Not one of these promises came from someone comfortable. This entire book was written by the lonely for the lonely, out of the exact hour you're in right now. Now here's the honest part, and then I'll let you go. I don't know what your tomorrow looks like. This video didn't fix your life. Nothing said in the last 2 hours put a person in your kitchen or a name in your phone. You are, in the most literal sense, sitting exactly where you were sitting when you started. But something is different, and I want to name it precisely because I don't want to oversell it, and I don't want to undersell it either. You now know that the loneliness is not a verdict. That's all. That's the whole thing. It's not a verdict. It's not a measurement of your worth. It's not evidence about God's attention. It's not a report on your future. It's weather. Real weather. It will soak you. It will keep you up. It will make you cold, and nobody gets to tell you it isn't happening. But it's not geology. It's not the ground. And the ground tonight is a God who has foreclosed the possibility of letting go of you, who has your tears in a bottle and your name on his hands and your room half finished, who is chasing you with goodness and mercy and has never once lost a trail. So here's what I want you to do. Not tomorrow. Tonight. Say something to him. It doesn't have to be good. Promise 34. The groan counts, and it's already been translated. Promise 63. The only entry requirement is honesty. So say the true thing, even if the true thing is, I'm angry, or I don't know if you're there or just help. Then go to sleep. Promise 22. The wall is guarded. It doesn't need you tonight, and in the morning there'll be new mercy on the ground. Promise 62. There has been every morning so far, including the ones you don't remember surviving, and then find someone. Promise 43. Go find the person carrying something they can't lift. They're within a mile of you, and they feel exactly as invisible as you do. And I have watched this work for a long time. The fastest way out of the pit is to lower a rope to somebody else in it. That's it. That's the 100. One last thing. Go back to the comments and scroll. Do it now, before you close this. Look at the cities: Manila, Lagos, Manchester, Ohio, São Paulo, a truck stop off the interstate, a hospital parking lot, somebody's kitchen table in Dublin at 4 in the morning. Every one of those is a person who typed their city into a video about loneliness at the exact hour you did. You are not the one. You never were. You're the 99 and the 1, and the shepherd is out in the dark anyway, because that's the thing about him. And it's where we started, and it's where we'll end. He goes until he finds it. Not until he gets tired. Not until the weather turns. Until he finds it. Good night. He's got you. He's had you the whole time.